Chapter 1692. Kill. Everyone was looking at Dao Yi. Dao Yi walked up to Yi Xian and smiled. Surprised? Yi Xian nodded. Dao Yi shook his head. She is no longer the little sister I knew. The current her only wants me dead. Yi Xian was silent. Indeed, a gu wanted Dao Yi to die from the beginning. Dao Yi said softly, I also understand. I don't owe her anything. Back then, I betrayed Master for her. Now, I suddenly feel that it wasn't worth it. It really wasn't worth it. Saying this, tears flowed down from her eyes. Yi Xian sighed in his heart. He knew that Dao Yi had given up. He had given up on the alien race and his little sister. Especially towards this gu. She had sacrificed so much for this gu, yet this gu wholeheartedly wanted her dead. Bitterly disappointed. At the side, Yuya looked at Dao Yi and did not say anything. She knew that Dao Yi would no longer have any relationship with the alien race. Dao Yi turned to look at Yuya. Military advisor Yuya, don't play these cheap tricks in the future. Because doing so is really degrading. Yuya smiled. All right. Saying this, she looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, are you ready? Yi Xian said with a smile, come on. Yuya's lips curled up. As you wish. As soon as she finished speaking, she snapped her fingers. Boom. The seals in the surroundings suddenly disappeared bit by bit. At the same time, the black vortex began to tremble violently. Gradually, countless illusory figures appeared in the surrounding space. Alien race experts. Yuya looked at Yi Xian. Kill. There was no nonsense. This time, their goal was very clear. They wanted to kill Yi Xian first, then devour this universe. All of the alien dimensional race powerhouses charged towards Yi Xian. Obviously, he didn't want to give Yi Xian any chance. Dao Yi's eyes narrowed slightly, and he was about to attack. However, Yi Xian suddenly said, allow me. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian took a step forward and slowly closed his eyes. His body began to tremble. Boom! Two giant dragons suddenly flew out from Yi Xian's arms. One gold and one black. The two dragons rapidly expanded and engulfed the entire starry sky. Countless alien dimensional race experts were forced to retreat. Seeing the two dragons, Yuya frowned. Sky Fey Kingdom, meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly looked at Crescent, and she immediately clenched her right hand tightly when she saw this scene. Meanwhile, Yi Xian had already charged in front of her, and then he drew his sword and slashed. The moment the sword slashed out, the entire starry sky trembled. 135 superimposed sword-drawing techniques. Moreover, it was enhanced by the power of his bloodline. This sword strike could be said to be Yi Xian's current limit. Of course, he didn't utilize the power of the beast god. If he did, then it would be even stronger. Yuya's expression changed drastically when she sensed how terrifying Yi Xian's sword strike was. Yi Xian wants to end her with a single strike. She didn't think too much about it and suddenly pressed her hands together. In an instant, a strange beam of light appeared above her head. Bang! Yuya was blasted 3 kilometers back by Yi Xian's sword strike, and Yi Xian was blasted flying by the formidable force. After he stopped, Yi Xian glanced at his slightly numb hand, and then he looked at the beam of light above Yuya's head. Dao Yi suddenly said, timeline. Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi, and Dao Yi said solemnly, she's an expert above intent, or in other words, the Eternity Realm. Eternity Realm experts can materialize the dimension of time, or in other words, the timeline. Timeline. Yi Xian turned to look at Yuya, who had a smear of blood at the corner of her mouth. Although that sword strike just now didn't kill Yuya, it still injured her. At that moment, Yuya was extremely shocked. She didn't expect that even after she took out the timeline, she would still be injured by Yi Xian. The power of Yi Xian's sword strike was actually this strong. Monster. Too monstrous. This guy isn't any weaker than God Yi from back then. Thinking of this, a trace of killing intent flashed in Yuya's eyes. Kill. As soon as he finished speaking, countless alien dimensional race experts in the starry sky dashed towards Yi Xian and the others. The two dragons summoned by Yi Xian were directly stalled. Seeing so many alien race experts rushing over, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. It was impossible for him to resist so many alien race experts by himself. Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes and said softly, "Senior, help me." The beast god said, "Are you ready?" Yi Xian nodded. "Come." The beast god smiled. "Then come." Boom. A powerful force suddenly swept out from Yi Xian's body. At that moment, the starry sky within hundreds of thousands of kilometers began to seethe. Yi Xian's face instantly contorted. At that moment, he felt as if his body was about to explode. In the distance, Yuya frowned. Why did this guy's aura increase again? At this moment, Yi Xian clenched his fists tightly. Boom! The surrounding starry sky began to be annihilated inch by inch. Yi Xian suddenly roared and smashed his fist down. Rumble! In an instant, a powerful force erupted from Yi Xian's fist. This explosion was like a volcanic eruption, causing the entire starry sky to shatter. As for the few alien race experts at the very front, their souls were destroyed on the spot. Because this force didn't just destroy space, it even destroyed the temporal dimension of the starry sky. Yuya glanced coldly at Yi Xian and was about to attack. However, a voice suddenly resounded by her ear. "Allow me." As soon as the voice resounded, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian's pupils constricted, and he swiftly smashed his fist forward. The middle-aged man smashed his fist forward as well. It was a head-on collision. As soon as their fists collided. Rumble! A deafening explosion suddenly resounded in the battlefield, and Yi Xian instantly retreated tens of thousands of feet away. However, the middle-aged man didn't move an inch. As soon as Yi Xian stopped, his body had split open, but it quickly repaired itself. Yi Xian raised his head to look at the middle-aged man in the distance. Dao Yi said in a low voice, "The patriarch of the alien race, Li Shixin." Yi Xian frowned. "A human's name?" Dao Yi shook his head. "This is a translated name. As for the alien race's name, you wouldn't understand it even if I told you." Yi Xian was speechless. Dao Yi said in a low voice, "How do you feel now?" Yi Xian looked at his body. Although he had the immortal bloodline and purple aura to repair himself, he still felt very uncomfortable. His internal organs were damaged. Yi Xian looked at Li Shixin in the distance. Even the patriarch of the alien race had appeared. Li Shixin looked at Yi Xian. "God Yi, compared to before, you're so much weaker now." Yi Xian slowly clenched his right hand and asked in his heart, "Senior Beast God, how much power can I borrow from you now?" After a moment of silence, Beast God said, 20%. This is the limit you can reach at the moment. Moreover, if you borrow 20% of my power, your body might not be able to withstand it. Most importantly, even if you borrow 20% of my power, you won't be able to fight against the alien race's patriarch with your current strength. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. He had to fight even if he couldn't win. At that moment, Beast God suddenly smiled. "Kid, I'll help you deal with this person." Yi Xian was stunned. The Beast God laughed heartily. "Didn't I lose to you once in a bet? Now, I'll help you deal with this person to repay that favor. What do you think?" "Of course, I won't be able to defeat this person in my current state. At most, I can only hold him back. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Thank you, Senior." Beast God smiled. Then, the arm guards in Yi Xian's hands suddenly flew out. In the distance, Li Shixin frowned and pointed his finger forward. Rumble. The arm guards were forced to stop. At that moment, a figure suddenly floated out from Beast God's arm. It was Beast God. Beast God sent a punch straight at Li Shixin. Brute force. Li Shixin frowned. He didn't dodge, and he just smashed his fist towards Beast God. Rumble. As soon as their fists collided, a powerful wave of energy swept through the starry sky. Everyone here was blasted back repeatedly, and that included Yi Xian. Yi Xian slashed down with his sword. Hiss. The wave of energy in front of him was slashed apart. Yi Xian gazed at Beast God and Crescent Moon with an extremely solemn expression in his eyes. The strength of these two people was not an ordinary kind of ferocious. Meanwhile, Beast God's voice resounded, "Kid, don't just stand there and watch. I can only hold him back for a while. Hurry up and do whatever you want." Yi Xian smiled embarrassedly, and then he turned to look at Crescent Moon. Crescent Moon smiled, "You want to kill me first?" Yi Xian walked towards Crescent Moon while holding his sword tightly in his left hand. At this moment, his blood started to boil. Bloodline energy. In the distance, Crescent Moon's smile gradually disappeared. Attack. As soon as she finished speaking, the space on both sides suddenly split apart. The next moment, the space around Yi Xian started to undulate like waves. At this moment, Dao Yi suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and pressed her palm down. Rumble. The space around Yi Xian split apart, and numerous afterimages flew out. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian and said, "Disaster, and the rest will hold him back. Be careful." After saying that, she charged forward, and the space around her started to boil. The power of the time dimension. Yi Xian glanced at Dao Yi. Only now did he realize that Dao Yi's main body was extraordinarily strong. Without hesitation, Yi Xian charged towards Crescent Moon. Crescent Moon narrowed her eyes and clenched her right hand. She was about to attack when Yi Xian suddenly changed direction and charged towards the black vortex. Crescent Moon's expression changed drastically. "Don't you dare." As she spoke, she charged towards Yi Xian. Meanwhile, Yi Xian slashed down with his sword. Boom! As soon as his sword descended, the black vortex spatial passageway exploded. Meanwhile, Crescent Moon had already charged over, and Yi Xian turned around and slashed down with his sword. Rumble. Crescent Moon was sent flying. Crescent Moon stared at Yi Xian with an extremely unsightly expression. Yi Xian smiled lightly, "Looks like I made the right bet. It must have taken a lot of effort to build this spatial passageway, right?" Crescent Moon looked at Yi Xian, "Do you think you can stop us just like that? Building a spatial passageway is just a matter of time for us." "A bit of time." Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. Right now, all he needed was this bit of time. In the distant sky, Li Shixin suddenly stopped. He looked at Beast God and said, "Sky Demon Empire." Beast God smiled and said, "Yes." Li Shixin shook his head, "Is it worth it to become enemies with my dimensional race for a human?" Beast God laughed and said, "I think it's too damn worth it." Li Shixin. P.S. I've been working hard to save up. House loan, car loan, milk powder. The pressure is huge. It wasn't easy to live. Chapter 1693. Alien Race? In fact, the Beast God didn't think that the alien race was weak, but who was he helping? Yi Xian. Others might not know, but he knew how abnormal this guy's father was. Not to mention the alien race, even 10 of them wouldn't be a match for this guy's father. Although the green-robed man wanted Yi Xian to face everything by himself, if Yi Xian's life was really in danger, would he really not care? The reason why he helped Yi Xian along the way was naturally to form a good karma. The green-robed man's rank was too high. Even if he wanted to form a good karma, he didn't have the chance. But Yi Xian was different. The current Yi Xian really needed his help. Helping Yi Xian was equivalent to forming a relationship with the green-robed man. Was it worth it to offend the alien race for Yi Xian? Yes. It was definitely worth it. Hearing the beast god's words, Li Shixin frowned deeply. What made the heavenly demon nation's demon beasts help Yi Xian? He couldn't understand. Could it be the 2 backers behind Yi Xian? Thinking of this, Li Shixin turned to look at Yi Xian. At this moment, he thought of Si Jing. In the surroundings, the alien race experts were about to attack but were stopped by Li Shixin. The alien race experts retreated behind Li Shixin. Li Shixin looked at Yi Xian and said, "It seems we don't know enough about young Master Yi." Yi Xian smiled and said, "I'm just an ordinary person." Li Shixin looked at Yi Xian. A moment later, Yi Xian's body gradually became illusory. The surrounding alien race experts also disappeared bit by bit. Yi Xian frowned. At this time, the beast god suddenly said, "They escaped into the time dimension." Yi Xian looked at the beast god and said, "Senior, many thanks." The beast god smiled and said, "No problem." With that, he returned to the beast god's arm. Yi Xian looked around. "Let's go." With that, he led the crowd away. Somewhere in the time dimension, Li Shixin looked at a phantom in front of him. "Tell me how Si Jing was killed that day." The phantom said in a low voice. After a long time, Li Shixin asked softly, "That white-haired lady killed Si Jing with just one move?" The figure nodded. Li Shixin was silent. At this moment, Yuya suddenly said, "We can't find out who that woman is." Li Shixin shook his head. The main point isn't the white-haired woman, but her attitude towards the plain-dressed woman. Crescent Moon looked at the phantom. "Is this respect?" The phantom nodded. "His attitude is quite respectful. Moreover, from the beginning until the end, that woman in a plain dress didn't even glance at Elder Si Jing." Hearing this, Yuya's expression gradually turned serious. Li Shixin said in a deep voice, "The white-haired woman's attitude towards the plain-dressed woman is respectful. This means that the plain-dressed woman's strength is above hers. Moreover, the plain-dressed woman didn't even glance at Si Jing. This means that she doesn't put Si Jing in her eyes at all. Whether it's the white-haired woman or the plain-dressed woman, I'm afraid that our alien race can't match their strength." Yuya frowned. "Strong to this extent?" Li Shixin looked at Yuya. "Possibly even stronger." Yuya, Li Shixin looked into the distance. "The demon beast I fought with just now was only a soul. However, his strength wasn't any weaker than mine. In the Sky Demon Nation, his status and position must not be low. Yet, he was willing to follow this Yi Xian." Saying this, he slowly closed his eyes. "The person behind this Yi Xian isn't someone our race can match." Yuya said in a deep voice, "Are we going to give up on the origin of the great Tao and the spiritual energy of this universe?" Li Shixin glanced at Yuya. "The lives of our clansmen are more important." Yuya slightly lowered her head and didn't say anything. Li Shixin said, "Personally investigate that plain-dressed woman and Yi Xian's father. I want details." Yuya nodded. "Okay." After saying this, she turned around and disappeared. A complicated look flashed through Li Shixin's eyes. In the past, it was God Yi, and now it's this Yi Xian. Is this heaven's punishment for our alien race? In the past, the alien race had abundant spiritual energy, and the origin of the great Tao was also incomparably abundant. However, with the alien race's unrestrained devouring and squandering, the spiritual energy of the entire alien dimension began to dry up, and the origin of the great Tao completely disappeared. Not only that, but because of the alien race's strength, the alien race was the only race left in the entire alien dimension. All the other races were killed. Now, the alien dimension could no longer survive. If they didn't devour a new world, the ones to die would be the alien race. After a while, Li Shixin turned around and left. Lakeside, inside the bamboo house. At this moment, the expressions of Yi Xian and the others were somewhat solemn. Dao Yi said in a deep voice, "They might reinvestigate you." Yi Xian asked, "And then?" Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian and said, "Then they might directly inform the Yi clan and have them deal with you and the plain-dressed woman behind you. In this way, they can sit back and reap the benefits. Although they might not be able to obtain the great Tao body in this way, they would be able to obtain this universe without taking any risks. Therefore, they might inform the Yi clan." "Inform the Yi clan?" Yi Xian said in a soft voice, "In that case, our enemy will change from the alien race to the Yi clan?" Dao Yi nodded. "It depends on whether the alien race is greedy or stupid. However, the patriarch of the alien race is not a fool. Since he stopped just now, it's obvious that he wants to reinvestigate you. If the disadvantages of killing you outweigh the advantages, he will definitely not continue to target you. Instead, he will inform the Yi clan and have them fight you to the death. Therefore, we must prepare for the worst." Yi Xian nodded slightly. "We must prepare for the worst." Mu Xing suddenly said, "Why don't I contact the subordinates of the former prince of the Yi clan?" Yi Xian shook his head. "That's not realistic. After you escaped, with God Ye's mother's methods, the remaining people must have been dealt with. Even if they haven't been dealt with, after so many years, those people may not be as loyal as before. Especially now, I have yet to awaken, so it's even more impossible for them to be loyal to me. Moreover, it's too dangerous for you to go to the Yi clan now." Mu Xing said in a deep voice, "Prince, what you said makes sense, but don't underestimate your influence in the clan." Yi Xian shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Mu Xing, that was in the past. Many things can change, especially people's hearts. Moreover, even with the support of some subordinates, can they fight against that woman? Back then, God Yi was already defeated at his peak. At that time, there were still many elders supporting him, but now? I'm willing to bet that in the Yi clan, all the elders who supported God Yi back then must have been dealt with." Mu Xing's expression turned a little ugly. "Then what should we do? Wait for death?" Yi Xian shook his head. "Rather than rely on others, I might as well rely on my father. At least, my father should be reliable." At that moment, Xiaota said excitedly, "Young master, are you going to use the Swordmaster's token?" Yi Xian sighed softly. He took out the Swordmaster's token and looked at it in his hand, then shook his head. "I don't really want to use it." Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. "Your father left it for you?" Yi Xian nodded. Dao Yi said again, "You promised him not to use it?" Yi Xian shook his head. "No." Dao Yi said softly, "So, you don't want to use it for yourself?" Yi Xian nodded. "I don't really want to." With that, he smiled faintly. "Of course, if the Yi clan really wants to deal with me, I definitely won't care so much. The strength of the Yi clan is definitely not something he can fight against now. In that case, he definitely won't care about anything. He can't wait for a few of his people to die before using it, right?" At this time, Mu Xing suddenly said, "Can this token fight against the Yi clan?" Yi Xian glanced at the Swordmaster's token in his hand and smiled. "It should be." Mu Xing hesitated for a moment and said, "Prince, I think you might have underestimated the Yi clan." Yi Xian looked at Mu Sheng. Mu Sheng said in a deep voice, "The alien race is very strong, but in front of the Yi clan, they are really a small force. Even if the Yi clan is no longer the #1 clan in the immortal world, ordinary forces can't shake them. In fact, all the forces outside the immortal world are nothing in front of the Yi clan." At this time, Xiaota suddenly jumped out and said, "Hey, are you looking down on Master?" Mu Sheng said indifferently, "I don't mean to look down on anyone. I just want to let Prince know that the Yi clan is not an ordinary force. Prince can't put your hopes on others." "Bullshit." Xiaota jumped up, "Woman, the Yi clan is just a fart in front of Master." "A fart? As long as you don't take the initiative to use the Swordmaster's token, annihilating your Yi clan is just a matter of a finger." Mu Sheng sneered, "You are the most boastful Ta I have ever seen." "Yi Xian," Xiaota jumped up and down in anger, "Woman, you actually said that I am boasting. You are pissing me off." Mu Sheng ignored Xiaota and looked at Yi Xian, "Prince, you haven't awakened yet. You don't know how strong the Yi clan is. I can only say that you must not put your hopes on others. The forces outside the eternal world and the forces inside the eternal world are like heaven and earth. You must know that in the eternal world, there is eternal Qi. Those top experts have a lifespan of at least hundreds of thousands of years. They have lived for so long, their strength is not comparable to those outside." Yi Xian nodded, "I know." Mu Sheng looked at Yi Xian, "What is Prince's plan?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "My plan is to carry it on my own. If I can't, then I will call for help." Mu Sheng smiled bitterly, "Prince, believe me, no matter who you call, it will be useless. Eternal World's Yi clan, sigh." On the side, Avicii also said, "Prince, Mu Sheng is not trying to scare you, nor is he looking down on Prince's father. It's just that the Yi clan is really strong. If you call for help, you will just be throwing away your life." At this moment, Xiaota suddenly roared, "You guys are going to piss me off." As it spoke, it suddenly floated in front of Yi Xian and touched the Swordmaster token lightly. "Activate the Swordmaster token now. Call someone over." After a moment of silence, a ray of sword light suddenly enveloped Xiaota. Moments later, the ray of sword light disappeared. At the same time, a voice suddenly sounded from the Swordmaster token. "Since you are not Master and you are not Master's direct descendant, you are not qualified to activate the Swordmaster token. I'll give you 2 words." As it spoke, it paused for a moment before continuing, "Scram. Everyone." Chapter 1694. Scram. Xiaota was dumbfounded. "He actually told me to scram? How can I tolerate that?" Xiaota charged towards the Swordmaster token. Boom! Soon, the Ta and the token started fighting. Yi Xian looked at the Swordmaster token and was surprised. He did not expect the Swordmaster token to be able to speak. That meant that the Swordmaster token had a spirit. At this moment, Xiaota suddenly flew in front of Yi Xian and said with a trembling voice, "Young master, it hit me." Yi Xian smiled and said, "You can hit it too." Xiaota hesitated and said, "I don't think I can beat it." Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, the Swordmaster token floated in front of Yi Xian and circled around Yi Xian as if it was sizing up Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at the Swordmaster token and did not speak. At this moment, the Swordmaster token trembled slightly and landed steadily in Yi Xian's palm. Obviously, it recognized Yi Xian's identity. Yi Xian looked at the Swordmaster token in his hand and fell into deep thought. Sword Alliance. A Sword Alliance. Yi Xian was puzzled. Could the Sword Alliance created by his father defeat the Yi clan? He was not confident. Of course, he was very confident in his father. However, his father's subordinates might not be very strong. Yi Xian sighed. He put away the Swordmaster token and walked to the lakeside. At this moment, he felt helpless. The harder he worked, the stronger the enemy would be. How could anyone live like this? Dao Yi suddenly walked to Yi Xian's side and turned to look at Yi Xian. She smiled and said, "Do you find it difficult?" Yi Xian nodded. Dao Yi suddenly grabbed Yi Xian's hand. "It's okay. I'll go with you." Yi Xian turned to Dao Yi and smiled, "We might die." Dao Yi blinked. "Do I look like I'm afraid of death?" Yi Xian laughed, "I'm not afraid of death. But I don't want to die." Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian, smiled and said, "Then let's destroy the Leaf Clan." Yi Xian laughed. "Let's overturn the Leaf Clan." Behind Yi Xian, Mu Sheng sighed softly. Overturn the Yi Clan? In fact, she really wanted to say that Yi Xian wanted to use external forces to overthrow the Yi Clan. It was simply a fantasy. A master of the intent realm? In the Yi Clan, it was nothing. Back then, she was also in the intent realm. However, she was not even qualified to enter the Yi Clan. Who could defeat the Yi Clan? Perhaps only the strongest clan in the past, the Moke Celestial Clan, had the strength to do so. However, the Moke Celestial Clan had been destroyed. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Disaster, have you found Sister Nian and the others?" The Disaster Law shook its head. "Still no." Yi Xian frowned. "Disappeared?" The Disaster Law said in a deep voice, "They might not be in this universe anymore." Yi Xian looked at the Disaster Law. "Not in this universe?" The Disaster Law nodded. "If they were in this universe, it would be very easy to find them. However, I still can't find them. There is only one explanation. They have left this universe." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "If Sister Nian and Tu went somewhere else, they would have told me." "Unless they left in a hurry," Dao Yi suddenly said, "could it be that your father took them away?" Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. "What do you mean?" Dao Yi said solemnly, "Doesn't your father have a force called the Sword Alliance? Both of them are swordsmen. Will they be taken by your father to join the Sword Alliance?" "Of course, this is just my guess." Yi Xian said softly, "That's possible." He knew that his father and Butcher. They knew each other. Moreover, his father was very respectful to Tuesday. Suddenly, a woman appeared here. Time Law. The Law of Time looked at Yi Xian and the others and said, "The alien dimensional race is currently reopening the spatial channel." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Are they going to send more experts over?" Dao Yi suddenly said, "It could also be a retreat." Everyone looked at Dao Yi. Dao Yi raised his head and looked into the depths of the starry sky. If they choose to retreat, it means that they are going to inform the Leaf Clan. She then looked at Yi Xian. "Now, we can prepare for the worst." Yi Xian nodded. "I understand." At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in the sky. It was the patriarch of the alien dimensional race, Li Shixin. Li Shixin looked down at Yi Xian and said, "Young Master Yi, we underestimated the person behind you." As he spoke, he glanced at the surroundings and said softly, "This universe is filled with spirit energy. Unfortunately, it's not fated with my alien dimensional race for now. Young Master Yi, welcome your new enemy." As soon as he finished speaking, his body gradually became illusory. Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Don't. Let's continue fighting." Li Shixin looked at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian was quite speechless. Damn it. Why did the enemy suddenly become so smart this time? They just stopped fighting. He wasn't used to it. Meanwhile, Li Shixin vanished. The Leaf Clan. Yi Xian remained silent for a long time before he said, "Avici Dao, Mu Sheng, tell me about the Leaf Clan." Mu Xing nodded. The Leaf Clan was once the #1 clan in Eternal Life World. Yi Xian suddenly said, "What rank does intent belong to the Leaf Clan?" Mu Xing glanced at Yi Xian and said, "It belongs to doing odd jobs." Yi Xian lay down and slowly closed his eyes. "Let's not talk about it for now. Let me calm down." As he spoke, he pulled the hand of the Law of Life and placed it on his head. "Help me treat it, I have a headache, everyone." Somewhere in the starry sky, a figure was constantly shuttling through the starry sky. Just like this, about a day later, the figure suddenly arrived in a deathly silent starry sky. In this deathly silent starry sky, there were countless corpses floating. They were densely packed and covered the entire starry sky. The death chi here was so dense that it was almost tangible. Even an intent realm expert would find it difficult to bear. The figure carefully avoided the death chi and slowly walked into the distance. About an hour later, he saw a white stone gate. The Gate of Eternal Life. Through this gate, one could reach the legendary Eternal Life world. And around the Gate of Eternal Life, there were even more corpses. Each of the corpses was at least at the intent realm, and there were countless Eternity realm experts. These people all wanted to enter the Eternal Life world. However, all of them had been killed. Eternal Life world. The aura of eternal life was something countless cultivators yearned for even in their dreams. Even the alien dimensional race was tempted, but they didn't dare to have any thoughts about it. Right at this moment, the door of eternal life suddenly trembled, and then a man walked out from within it. The man looked at the alien dimensional race in front of him with a cold expression. The alien dimensional race hurriedly bowed respectfully. "I come from the alien dimension, and I have an important matter to report to the Yi clan." The man was expressionless. "Speak." The alien dimensional race hurriedly said, "Yi clan's god Yi has returned." Hearing this, the man's pupils shrank. At this time, the space around the alien dimensional race suddenly turned into a black vortex, and the alien dimensional race disappeared without a trace. In the field, the man's expression was somewhat unsightly. A moment later, he turned around and left. That alien dimensional race suddenly appeared in a large hall. The hall was extremely quiet. As if he had discovered something, the alien dimensional race suddenly raised his head and looked into the distance. Not far away, a woman was sitting there. She looked to be in her 30s, wore a black dress, and had a blood pattern drawn between her eyebrows. The alien dimensional race immediately bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Patriarch of the Yi clan." The woman in front of him was the Patriarch of the Yi clan, Yi Lingtian. She was also one of the 4 great experts of the Eternal Life world. Yi Lingtian didn't say anything, and instead focused on reading the memorials in her hands. The alien dimensional race stood in the middle of the hall with his head slightly lowered, not daring to even breathe loudly. Although he was an expert of intent, at this moment, he felt as insignificant as a speck of dust. After a long time, Yi Lingtian placed the memorials in her hands to the side and looked at the alien dimensional race below. "Still alive?" The alien dimensional race hurriedly replied respectfully, "Yes." Yi Lingtian stood up and walked towards the alien dimensional race. The alien dimensional race's body immediately trembled. At this moment, he felt as if hundreds of thousands of mountains were crushing him. Yi Lingtian looked at the alien dimensional race in front of him. "Reincarnation?" The alien dimensional race nodded again, and replied with a trembling voice, "Yes." Yi Lingtian slowly closed his eyes. "Come out." As soon as he finished speaking, 6 black-robed people suddenly appeared in front of Yi Lingtian. The 6 of them simultaneously knelt on the ground. Yi Lingtian remained expressionless. "Aren't you going to explain?" The leader of the black-robed people said hoarsely, "Patriarch, that day, we saw him being killed by that woman with our own eyes." Yi Lingtian looked at the black-robed people. "Are they all dead?" This, the black-robed people's bodies began to tremble. Yi Lingtian calmly said, "It seems that they aren't all dead." The black-robed people immediately knelt on the ground again. "I hope that patriarch can give us a chance to atone for our crimes," Yi Lingtian suddenly said. "Drag them away and feed them to the dogs." As she spoke, she walked towards the entrance of the distant hall. As soon as Yi Lingtian's voice fell, an invisible hand suddenly swept across the hall, and the 6 black-robed people were directly swept away. The alien dimensional race's body trembled even more violently. Those 6 people were all Eternity Realm experts. They were killed just like that? Yi Lingtian walked to the entrance of the hall. She looked at the distant horizon, where there was a white cloud floating. The sky was very blue. Behind her, the alien dimensional race didn't even dare to breathe loudly. A moment later, Yi Lingtian suddenly said, "Seng Jia." As soon as the voice fell, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared not far from Yi Lingtian. The middle-aged man respectfully bowed. "Patriarch." Yi Lingtian expressionlessly said, "Do you know what to do?" Seng Jia slightly nodded. "Understood." After saying that, he turned around and left. At this time, Yi Lingtian suddenly said, "Wait." Seng Jia stopped. Yi Lingtian calmly said, "I'm afraid that Hela woman already knows about this matter. You must be mentally prepared." Seng Jia nodded. "All right." Yi Lingtian then said, "Everything related to him must be erased. I don't want to hear anything about him." Seng Jia slightly bowed, then turned around and left. Yi Lingtian looked at the distant horizon, the corner of her mouth slightly raised. "My good son, you really don't let your mother rest easy. You can't even die cleanly." Her voice was very gentle, but her smile was very cold. P.S. Right, there's a reader, mountains, rivers, and seas. Say sorry. I didn't do what I promised you. I'm really sorry. If you can read this, remember to add me again. I'll give you a pair of couple bracelets with your wife. I'll give you a couple bracelet as compensation. Ching, style. I'm really sorry. FPZW. Chapter 1695. On a mountain peak, a man walked quickly to a cave. At that moment, an old man stood in front of the man. The man bowed slightly. "Elder Qi, I have something to report to the young mistress." The old man shook his head. "The young mistress is in seclusion. Nothing can disturb her." The man said in a deep voice, "God Yi is back." Boom! The door of the cave suddenly shattered and a woman slowly walked out. The woman wore a long black dress. Her long hair draped over her shoulders and her face was peerless. However, her eyes were cold and unfriendly. The woman walked in front of the man. "Where is he?" The man said in a deep voice, "Young mistress, he has reincarnated." The woman slowly closed her eyes and a cold killing intent suddenly swept across the sky. Boom! In an instant, the white clouds in the sky turned into nothingness. The woman suddenly walked into the distance. At that moment, Elder Qi suddenly said, "Yen, do you really want to continue to intervene in the Yi clan's affairs?" The woman stopped. "Second uncle, I can't ignore him." Elder Qi sighed softly. "Yen, he was a genius back then. In order to win him over, the family was willing to follow you to deal with the Yi clan. However, things are different now. That woman from the Yi clan has already eliminated his supporters in the Yi clan. Moreover, she has already reached that level. Let alone the current God Yi, even if the previous God Yi returns, it will be useless." The woman slowly closed her eyes. Elder Qi said again, "Now, the Hera clan will no longer be enemies with the Yi clan because it is no longer worth it." The woman nodded. "I know." Elder Qi sighed softly. "Girl, his time is over." The woman shook her head. "Second uncle, I must save him." Elder Qi asked, "Even if you save him, so what? Can you save him for the rest of his life? That woman from the Yi clan has a heart of poison that is rarely seen in the world. She will not let him go. Back then, she did not dare to start a war with the Hera clan because of the internal strife of the Yi clan. However, the situation is different now. If the Hera clan dares to protect God Yi, she will definitely start a war with us. The woman did not speak. Elder Qi sighed softly, "Girl, you also have to consider the family. Moreover, you have been very kind to him." The woman looked at the distant sky. "Second uncle, if I leave the Hera clan, that woman will definitely know. Can you make a trip for me?" Mr. Qi sighed again. The woman said softly, "Please." Old Qi's expression was complicated. "Girl, is he that good?" The woman shook her head. "I was engaged to him. As long as he doesn't personally cancel the engagement, I will always be his fiancée." "Break off the engagement." Elder Qi was silent for a long time before he said, "I'll go." The woman said, "Thank you." Elder Qi said in a deep voice, "Girl, the strength of the Yi clan woman is already a mystery. You must not leave the Hera clan easily. Understand?" The woman looked at the horizon, her eyes cold, and she didn't say anything. Mr. Qi didn't say anything. He turned around and disappeared at the end of the sky. On the peak of the mountain, the woman just looked at the sky. The coldness in her eyes gradually turned into confusion. In the bamboo house by the lake, Yi Xian was sitting on a chair, quietly reading a book. A Vichy swordsman and saber shepherd saint were standing behind him. Seeing how calm Yi Xian was, Saint Mu couldn't help but ask, "Prince, do you have any countermeasures?" Yi Xian put down the ancient book and said with a smile, "There's no countermeasure. The Yi clan is so strong that I can't beat them." Saint Mu frowned slightly. "Then why aren't you panicking?" Yi Xian sighed softly, "What's the use of panicking? Saint Mu, do you think that the Yi clan woman will let me go if I beg for mercy?" Saint Mu shook his head. Yi Xian spread his hands, "That's it. Even if I beg for mercy, she won't let me go. Anyway, she won't let me go no matter what. What's the use of panicking?" Saint Mu said in a deep voice, "Then what are you going to do?" Yi Xian smiled, "If the alien clan comes to attack me, I'll fight to the end. If the Yi clan comes to attack me, I'll call for help. It's that simple." Saint Mu sighed softly, "Prince, you know nothing about the Yi clan's strength." On the side, Dao Yi suddenly smiled, "Saint Mu, how much do you know about Master's father?" Saint Mu shook his head, "I don't know." Dao Yi smiled slightly, "I know that the Yi clan is very strong, so strong that even in Tent Realm is an ant. However, I believe in Master's father." How terrifying was the green-robed man? She didn't know. However, she felt that even if the green-robed man faced the Yi clan, he definitely wouldn't be weak. Of course, she didn't dare to say that the green-robed man was stronger than the Yi clan. After all, the Yi clan was an aristocratic clan that even in Tent Realm was an ant. Saint Mu said again, "Prince, are you sure that your father in this life is stronger than the Yi clan?" Yi Xian shook his head, "I'm not sure." Saint Mu frowned and was about to speak, but Yi Xian said again, "That's not something I should consider." Saint Mu was a little confused, "Not something you should consider?" Yi Xian nodded. Saint Mu asked, "Then who should consider?" Yi Xian spread his hands, "Of course it's something my father should consider." Saint Mu was dumbfounded, "Prince, what if your father can't beat the Yi clan?" Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, "If he can't beat them, then I can only send him off." Everyone was speechless. Saint Mu shook his head, "Prince, you're so filial." Yi Xian was speechless. Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young master. Aren't you afraid of being beaten by master?" Yi Xian smiled, "If he can't beat them, then I can only send him off. Of course, after sending him off, it's my turn." Everyone was speechless. Saint Mu glanced at Yi Xian. "Prince, are you ready to admit defeat?" Yi Xian shook his head, "No." Saint Mu was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said, "Saint Mu, I said to call for help, but you said that the people I called can't beat the Yi clan. Tell me, what should I do now?" Saint Mu was silent. Yi Xian sighed softly, "It's too hard for me. First, I was almost killed by my mother. Now, there's another mother, and each one is stronger than the last." Sigh. As he said that, he shook his head. He had always felt that he was miserable, but now he felt that God Yi was even more miserable than him. His mother harmed him because of a misunderstanding. After the misunderstanding was resolved, they had reconciled. However, this God Yi was different. This God Ye's mother really wanted to kill him. No one would have a good time if their own mother did that to them. Being too outstanding was not a good thing either. Especially in such a large family or a secular emperor's family. The emperor's family had no familial ties, but was it not the same in a large family? At that thought, Yi Xian thought of his father again. His father was actually quite good. At least, his father hoped that he was better than him. It had to be said that reincarnation was very important. At that moment, a powerful aura suddenly rose into the sky from the lake in the distance. Yi Xian and the others turned to look. By the lake, an old man stood up. He had reached the realm of intent. The old man took a deep breath. After a while, he looked at his hands, his eyes full of excitement. Intent. He had finally reached the realm of intent. Haha, the old man could not help but laugh. Soon, the old man seemed to have thought of something and suddenly looked at Yi Xian in the distance. He quickly ran to Yi Xian and bowed respectfully. "Thank you, young Master Yi." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Congratulations." The old man quickly said, "It's all thanks to young Master Ye's promotion." He finally understood. In this world, one had to learn how to flatter sometimes. The better the flatterer, the better the future. Yi Xian smiled and said, "What's your next plan?" The old man quickly said, "I'm willing to follow young Master Yi and serve you faithfully." Yi Xian was about to speak when someone broke through in the distance. Yi Xian looked at the pseudo-intent powerhouses sitting by the lake and found that everyone's aura was getting stronger. Obviously, more and more people would reach the realm of intent. As these people reached the realm of intent, the strength of this universe would also rise to a higher level. However, the enemy had now become the Yi clan. In front of the Yi clan, these intent powerhouses were not even worth looking at. Thinking of this, Yi Xian sighed in his heart. These people had not yet been cultivated into intent powerhouses, but they were already cannon fodder level existences. Damn! Not only these people, but he was also about to become cannon fodder. How long had it been since he broke through? Not even half a year had passed. In other words, his father had only been gone for a few months and he had gone from a top powerhouse to cannon fodder. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian opened his palm and Xiao Ta appeared in his hand. Yi Xian looked at Xiao Ta. "Were my father's enemies that strong?" Xiao Ta was silent for a moment and said, "Master's life was worse than yours." However, his enemies were basically normal. Even if they were strong, they were not much stronger than him. Even if they were much stronger, he could basically beat them if he went crazy. As for you, young master, I think it's useless even if you go crazy. Yi Xian, Xiao Ta laughed mischievously. Young master, although master had people to help him, most of the time, he fought for it himself. As for you, young master, you basically won without doing anything. Yi Xian's face immediately darkened. Xiao Ta also realized that what he said was wrong and immediately said, "Of course, young master, your enemies are not normal. It's normal for you to need help." Yi Xian suddenly said, "Xiao Ta, back then, Qing, and father were enemies? Xiao Ta said in a deep voice, yes. That sister Su Qian was so terrifying. Yi Xian was a little curious. How terrifying? Xiao Ta said, back then, master was beaten very badly. Yi Xian asked again, as far as I know, Qing, seemed to want to destroy the world. In the end, was it father who stopped her? Xiao Ta nodded. Yes. Yi Xian was puzzled. Didn't dad lose to Qing, in the beginning? How did it end up in a tie again? Xiao Ta said nothing. Yi Xian asked, you don't know either? Xiao Ta thought for a moment and said, according to the Milky Way realm, master should have the protagonist's halo. Actually, young master, you might also have. Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 1696. Protagonist's Halo. Dao Yi was curious. Xiao Ta, what do you mean by protagonist's halo? Xiao Ta thought for a while and explained. Simply put, no matter what danger the protagonist encounters, he will not die. Not only will he not die, he will also become stronger and stronger. Everything in the world revolves around him. That's about it. Dao Yi was puzzled. No matter what, he will not die. Xiao Ta said. Yes. Dao Yi shook his head and smiled. That's too unbelievable. Yi Xian smiled. Xiao Ta, why do you say I have protagonist's halo too? Xiao Ta said. It's just a feeling. If master has protagonist's halo and you also have protagonist's halo, then your family will have two protagonists' halos. As he spoke, Xiao Ta became even more excited. With two protagonists' halos, you will be invincible. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. If I have protagonist's halo, then who gave it to me? Xiao Ta did not say anything. Yi Xian smiled. You don't know either? Xiao Ta thought for a long time. I have a bold idea. Yi Xian was curious. What idea? Xiao Ta said in a deep voice. Young master, have you read any ancient chivalrous books? Yi Xian said. I've read some before. Why? Xiao Ta said excitedly. Young master, do you think this world belongs to someone? At this moment, the sky in the distance suddenly split open. Boom! A formless power swept down in an instant. In an instant, the heavens and the earth were boiling. Yi Xian and the rest looked up. Inside the prison pagoda, Xiao Ta was hiding in a corner and shivering. At that moment, it suddenly had a bad premonition. Xiao Ta said with a trembling voice, I don't dare to talk nonsense anymore. Big brother, don't arrange for me. I still want to live for a few more years. Mu Sheng, who was standing beside Yi Xian, looked at the sky with a solemn expression. The Yi clan is here. Yi Xian looked at the sky with a calm expression. In the sky, a middle-aged man walked out. Monk tribulation. Beside Yi Xian, Mu Sheng said solemnly, one of the three heavenly generals under that woman. Her strength is extremely terrifying. It was extremely terrifying. Yi Xian looked at Seng Jie. Indeed, this person gave him a feeling that he was more dangerous than Li Shixin. The Yi clan was not simple. In the horizon, Seng Jie looked at Yi Xian with a calm expression. Prince, you still haven't awakened? How boring. Down below, Saint Mu mocked, Seng Jie, if the prince had awakened, would you have dared to come alone? In the past, you were as lowly as a dog in front of the crown prince, have you forgotten? Seng Jie shook his head, the past is the past, the present is the present. Heir apparent, the clan chief isn't happy that you're still alive. She said that this time, you will disappear from this world. Not only you, but everything related to you will also disappear. Yi Xian said with a smile, he is going to kill all of us. Seng Jia looked around and said softly, "Prince, this is indeed a good place to rest." Then, he looked at Yi Xian, "Prince, do you want to do it yourself, or should I do it?" Yi Xian smiled, "Is the Yi clan always so long-winded when killing people?" Seng Jia looked at Yi Xian, "The outcome has been decided." He did not like to be long-winded. He looked around and did not sense any powerful aura in this universe. In other words, there will be no accidents this time. Something is not right. Seng Jia looked at the beast god's arm on Yi Xian's arm. "There is a powerful soul in this thing. Come out and take a look." Ah! At this time, the beast god's voice suddenly resounded and the beast god appeared above Yi Xian. Seng Jia looked at the beast god calmly, not particularly weak. The beast god smiled, "Don't you think it is too early to say that the outcome has been decided?" Seng Jia smiled, "Even if he awakens now, he will not be able to make a comeback after being deprived of his bloodline." The beast god laughed, "Is the Yi clan really invincible in the universe?" Seng Jia was expressionless, "I dare not say we are invincible, but the number of people qualified to be my Yi clan's opponent is less than 5. Heavenly Monster Nation is even less qualified." The beast god smiled, "I would like to ask for advice." Seng Jia nodded, "Come." The beast god suddenly disappeared. In the distance, Seng Jia waved his hand and in an instant, the entire sky turned into a strange river. Below, Mu Sheng's expression was solemn, "The river of time." He actually cultivated the river of time. Yi Xian looked at Mu Sheng, "What is the river of time?" Mu Sheng said solemnly, "It's an extremely terrifying divine ability that can completely materialize the time dimension and use it." Saying so, she looked at the sky, "Prince, run." Yi Xian shook his head, "Where do I run?" Mu Sheng looked at Yi Xian, "Then what do we do?" Yi Xian smiled, "Let's wait and see first." As if thinking of something, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Xiao Ta, where did you run off to?" Inside the prison pagoda, Xiao Ta was still hiding in a corner. Yi Xian summoned Lil Pagoda. Looking at Lil Pagoda, he said with a smile, "Lil Pagoda, do I really have that so-called protagonist halo?" Xiao Ta shook his head, "Young lord, I don't know anything, don't ask me." Saying so, he directly ran back into the prison pagoda. Yi Xian was stunned, what was wrong with Xiao Ta? At this moment, the sky suddenly split open. The next moment, a figure landed in front of Yi Xian and the others. It was the beast god. Yi Xian looked at the beast god, "It's already over?" Mu Sheng suddenly said, "They have been fighting for at least a few hundred days." A few hundred days. Yi Xian, in the sky, the monk Tribulation also appeared. He looked down at the beast god below, "I underestimated you." The beast god laughed, he looked at Yi Xian, "My main body is not here, I can't do anything to this person, kid, I tried my best. Next, it's your turn to perform." Yi Xian looked at the monk Tribulation, he smiled, "I want to ask a question, don't mind me. Is your patriarch really my biological mother in my previous life?" The monk Tribulation looked at Yi Xian, "Yes." Yi Xian said again, "Could it be a misunderstanding? For example, she wanted to train me, so she did this to me?" The monk Tribulation stared at Yi Xian, "I think, you might be thinking too much." Yi Xian frowned, "Do you have a son?" The monk Tribulation frowned, "What do you want to ask?" Yi Xian said seriously, "Your Excellency, if your son is too outstanding, will you kill him?" The monk Tribulation's eyes narrowed, a cold light flashed in his eyes. Yi Xian smiled, "Actually, I just want to see if it is a misunderstanding. But now it seems that it is not a misunderstanding, my mother in my previous life really wanted to kill me." The monk Tribulation looked at Yi Xian, "You were once the most monstrous prince of my clan, I don't want to kill you, you can choose to commit suicide, I will give you a dignified death." Yi Xian said, "I have one last question." The monk Tribulation, Yi Xian asked again, "What about my father in my previous life?" His wife wanted to kill his son, did he not care? The monk Tribulation looked at Yi Xian, did not speak. Yi Xian was a little puzzled, and was about to speak, but at this time, Mu Xing suddenly said, "Prince, your father died that year." Yi Xian frowned slightly, "Died?" Mu Xing nodded, "That woman said it herself." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "How did he die?" Mu Xing shook his head, "I don't know." Yi Xian suddenly said, "Could it be that woman killed him?" Hearing this, Mu Xing's eyelids twitched, "This is not impossible." On the side, Yi Xian's face was also a little ugly, if she really killed him, then isn't she too fierce? After killing her husband, she killed her son, fuck. At this time, the monk Tribulation suddenly said, "Prince, I will ask you one last time, will you kill yourself or will I kill you?" In fact, he hoped that Yi Xian would kill himself. Why? Because this guy is really the patriarch's son. What if one day the patriarch loses his mind and feels a little guilty towards this son? What should I do at that time? This is not impossible. Women are fickle. Therefore, he wanted Yi Xian to kill himself, so that he can avoid some karma. Yi Xian looked at the monk Tribulation, "I have one last question." The monk Tribulation's face immediately became cold, "Don't mess with my mentality." Yi Xian said seriously, "I want to ask, before you came, what did that woman say to you?" The monk Tribulation stared at Yi Xian, "Is this very important?" Yi Xian nodded, "Very important." The monk Tribulation said, "The patriarch wants you to disappear from this world, completely disappear, not only you, but also everything related to you. She really wants to kill you, not to train you, do you understand?" Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "After killing me?" The monk Tribulation frowned slightly, "What do you mean?" Yi Xian said seriously, "I think she has another meaning, and you have misunderstood her." The monk Tribulation stared at Yi Xian, "What do you mean?" Yi Xian sighed in a low voice, "You. Too naive. Let me tell you, she gave birth to me after 10 months of pregnancy. Think about it, which mother in this world really wants her son to die? If she really wants to kill me, why didn't she come herself, but let you come? You have to think about this carefully. Think about it carefully." Hearing this, the monk Tribulation's face became somewhat ugly. Yi Xian continued, "Indeed, we had a falling out because of some things, but now that so many years have passed, her anger should have almost dissipated. She asked you to kill me, not to actually kill me. She must have wanted to see my attitude now. Let me tell you, my attitude is that I know I was wrong. Go back and tell her that I know I was wrong. I won't make her angry anymore. I know I was wrong." Mu Xing and Avicii stared at Yi Xian in bewilderment. In the sky, Seng Jia's expression became more and more unsightly. Yi Xian looked at Seng Jia and said in a serious tone, "Seng Jia, taking revenge for your son is no joke, you have to think it through." Monk Tribulation. Chapter 1697. Revenge for killing him. At this moment, Seng Jia's heart was pounding. Who the fuck can resist this? Just as he thought, even if the patriarch really wants to kill Yi Xian, what if she suddenly feels guilty towards Yi Xian? At that time, the best way to eliminate the guilt in her heart is to kill him. Damn it! That's not impossible. Yi Xian looked at Seng Jia, "I think you can go back and ask about it. It's really not easy to cultivate to this point, and if you take a wrong step, then you'll be doomed eternally. There's nothing wrong with being steady. In any case, I can't run away from here. What do you think?" Seng Jia looked at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian continued, "An outsider like you shouldn't interfere in the matters between mother and son." Seng Jia was speechless. Yi Xian didn't speak again. The surroundings fell into silence. After a long time, Seng Jia glanced at Yi Xian, and then his figure gradually became illusory. In next to no time, he vanished completely. He's gone. Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief when he saw this. Mu Sheng spoke solemnly, "Young prince, are you really going to apologize to that woman?" Yi Xian shook his head and sighed, "Stupid Mu Sheng, how could you believe such nonsense? That woman is so ruthless, and her heart is so vicious that it's rare in the world. What's the point of apologizing?" Mu Sheng blinked. "You tricked him away?" Dao Yi said, "Do you have a backup plan?" Yi Xian looked up into the sky. "Let's go to the eternal world." Everyone in the surroundings was stunned when they heard this. Mu Sheng was astounded. "The eternal world?" Yi Xian nodded. Mu Sheng spoke solemnly, "Young prince, you just tricked Seng Jiawei, and now you want to go to the eternal world. What are you thinking?" Dao Yi was slightly puzzled. "What do you want to do?" Yi Xian looked at the horizon and chuckled. "That was just a stopgap measure because they will definitely come again. Not only would she come, but that woman might come in person. In that case, why don't we go to the immortal world ourselves?" Dao Yi said solemnly, "You're trying to find a way to survive." Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." Saint Mu spoke in a low voice, "You'll definitely die if you go to the eternal world." Yi Xian said with a smile, "Sage Mu, what do you think will happen to the Yi clan and that woman if I suddenly appear in the eternal world? And what about the major forces of the immortal world?" Mu Sheng looked at Yi Xian. "That woman will definitely kill you." Dao Yi suddenly said, "Not necessarily." Mu Sheng looked at Dao Yi. Dao Yi whispered, "If Master appears in the immortal world and that woman kills him now, how will Yi clan look at her? What do the major forces of the immortal world think of this? Whether it's killing a mother or a son, it's not honorable. Especially now, Master can no longer threaten her position. If she still kills him, not to mention other forces, even some people in Yi clan won't be able to bear it. Of course." Saying that, she looked at Yi Xian. "Master is gambling. Gambling with his life." Yi Xian said with a smile, "There's no other choice, let's gamble." Dao Yi said with a smile, "Don't you still have the Swordmaster token?" Yi Xian said with a smile, "I haven't given up yet, have I? I want to work hard first." Dao Yi didn't speak. She knows that Yi Xian doesn't want to use the Swordmaster token. Once the Swordmaster token is used, regardless of whether Yi Xian admits it or not, he will eventually develop a dependence in his heart. In the future, if he has an enemy, he can just use the token. Once he has this kind of mentality, wanting to surpass the green-robed man and the plain-skirt woman can be said to be a fantasy. The green-robed man left the Swordmaster token, the meaning behind it isn't that simple. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Let's go." Saying that, he looked at Dao Yi and said, "Dao Yi, you stay here and guard against the alien race." Dao Yi shook her head, "I'll go with you." Yi Xian was about to speak, but Dao Yi said, "I'll go with you, even if I die." She knew that Yi Xian telling her to stay here to guard against the alien race was fake. His real purpose was to not let her go with him and take risks. Because this time, Yi Xian doesn't have the confidence that he can win the gamble. In fact, Yi Xian has another purpose, which is to go to Eternal Life World. If he dies in Eternal Life World, at least this universe will be preserved. Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi and sighed in his heart. He knows that his thoughts and purpose can't be hidden from this woman. Dao Yi walked to Yi Xian's side, "Leave this place to Disaster and the others." "I'll go with you." Yi Xian didn't say anything. Dao Yi smiled and said, "If you don't agree, I'll secretly follow you. In any case, my legs are on my body." Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, "Then let's go together." Saying that, she looked at Disaster, "You guys stay here and be careful against the alien race." Disaster said in a deep voice, "I also want to go with you." Yi Xian shook his head, "No." Disaster looked at Yi Xian, "Why can Dao Yi, but I can't. Yi Xian was speechless. Here it comes. At this moment, he suddenly felt that it wasn't easy for God Yi back then. Yi Xian smiled bitterly, if we all go to Eternal Life World, what about this place? Disaster was expressionless, doesn't matter. Yi Xian, at this time, the time law also said, I want to go too. Yi Xian instantly felt a headache. Dao Yi looked at the time law and disaster law, smiled, do you know why Master liked me back then? The two women looked at Dao Yi, their expressions not particularly friendly. Back then, God Yi could be said to have favored Dao Yi alone. Dao Yi smiled, because you two only know how to be jealous and not think about him. Do you really think that I'm going with him to live and die with him? Disaster was expressionless, isn't that the case? Dao Yi shook his head, Disaster, this time we are going to Eternal Life World, not to compete in strength, but in wits. Are you two as cunning as I am? The two women were speechless. In terms of scheming, the two women were indeed no match for Dao Yi. Not even Ah Ming. Dao Yi said, although the alien race has retreated, it doesn't mean they won't come again. Someone must guard this place. Therefore, you two must stay here and assist Ah Ming, guarding this universe together. Yi Xian nodded, it's not like I won't return. Disaster suddenly asked, what if you don't return? Yi Xian smiled, I will definitely return, because there are too many people I care about here. Just as Disaster was about to say something, a voice suddenly came from the side, stop being so wishy-washy. Everyone looked over and saw a woman slowly walking over. The person who came was Ah Ming. Ah Ming glanced at Disaster. The two of you stay here and guard this universe with me. Saying that, she looked at Dao Yi and Yi Xian, come back alive, is there a problem? Yi Xian smiled, no. Ah Ming nodded, go. I will take care of your people for you. Yi Xian nodded, let's go. Saying that, he turned and left. At this moment, Ah Ming suddenly looked at Dao Yi, bring him back. Dao Yi nodded, okay. Soon, Yi Xian left a storage ring for Ah Ming, and the group disappeared into the horizon. They didn't bid farewell to anyone else. Ah Ming and the others looked at the horizon, deep in thought. In her storage ring, there were tens of thousands of great Dao origin crystals. If used well, it was enough to nurture countless intent realm experts. Most importantly, she, Disaster, and the others could also use these great Dao origin crystals to break through to the eternal realm or even beyond. At this moment, Disaster suddenly said, they will return, right? Ah Ming was expressionless, they will definitely return. Disaster looked at Ah Ming, why are you so sure? Ah Ming glanced at Disaster, the woman in the plain dress is invincible. Saying that, she turned and left. Disaster. Somewhere in the starry sky, the patriarch of the alien dimension race looked at the distant starry sky, silent. In front of Li Shixin stood a phantom. After a long time, Li Shixin said softly, that direction, he should be going to the eternal world. The phantom said solemnly, is he going to die? Li Shixin shook his head, he wants to fight to the death. The phantom was puzzled, what do you mean? Li Shixin looked at the horizon, not explaining. The phantom didn't dare to ask. The surroundings became silent. After a long time, Li Shixin said, let's go. After saying that, he turned and left. The phantom said solemnly, Patriarch, he has already left. If we make a move, that universe will be in our hands. Li Shixin stopped and turned to look at the phantom, as long as he doesn't die, everything is possible. Understand? The phantom, Li Shixin said softly, this Yi Xian is fancier and more mysterious than God Yi. If he doesn't die, the alien dimension race will not enter this universe. After saying that, he turned and disappeared into the starry sky. In the battlefield, the phantom sighed softly. His patriarch was good at everything, but he was too cautious. Being cautious was not a bad thing, but being overly cautious was not a good thing either. However, he didn't dare to say that. After all, he was just a pawn. The phantom shook his head and disappeared into the distance. In the starry sky, Yi Xian and the others were crazily shuttling through the starry sky. Yi Xian looked at the distant starry sky. Mu Sheng, have you heard of the Sword Alliance when you were in the Eternal World? Mu Sheng shook his head, never heard of it. Yi Xian looked at Mu Sheng, never heard of it? Mu Sheng nodded, never heard of it. It should be a force outside of the Eternal World. Yi Xian said softly, is Dad's force so low-key? Mu Sheng said solemnly, Prince, when you reach the Eternal World, you will find that the forces outside are really very weak. Yi Xian smiled, maybe. Dao Yi suddenly said, Mu Sheng, tell me about the major forces in the Eternal World and the situation of the Yi clan. In short, we need to understand the Yi clan and the entire Eternal World in detail. Mu Sheng nodded and said, in the Eternal World, there are very few forces, only 6. Eternal World. In the main hall, Seng Jie knelt on one knee on the ground. Not far from him was Yi Lingtian. After a long time, Yi Lingtian looked at Seng Jie. He told you that, so you came back? Seng Jie immediately knelt on the ground. Yi Lingtian shook his head. You, a person who has lived for hundreds of thousands of years, was fooled by someone who has lived for more than 20 years. Are you a pig? Boom! Suddenly, Seng Jie's body burst apart. Seng Jie. Chapter 1698. Inside the hall, after Seng Jie's body exploded, his soul once again knelt down. Seng Jie lay on the ground, not daring to speak. Yi Lingtian slowly walked in front of Seng Jie. She looked down at Seng Jie. You are afraid that I will settle accounts with you later. Seng Jie said with a trembling voice, this subordinate knows his mistake. Yi Lingtian smiled, you know your mistake? With that, she walked to the entrance of the hall. It is normal for you to be worried. In fact, I have often thought of him over the years, and sometimes I even feel a little guilty. Hearing this, Seng Jie was speechless and wanted to curse. At the entrance of the hall, Yi Lingtian suddenly smiled. If he was not so outstanding, maybe now we can still continue to be filial. Seng Jie lay on the ground, not daring to speak. I don't want to hear these words. Isn't this killing me? At this time, Yi Lingtian suddenly said, go. Seng Jie suddenly felt relieved, immediately bowed deeply, and then quietly left. At this time, a hoarse voice suddenly sounded behind Yi Lingtian, Miss, this old slave will go. Yi Lingtian said with a smile, ugly slave, what do you think my good son will do next? Behind Yi Lingtian, the hoarse voice sounded again, I don't know. Yi Lingtian looked into the distance and said with a smile, I am really curious. Behind him, the ugly slave said, this old slave will go. At this time, a shadow suddenly appeared in front of Yi Lingtian, Patriarch Yi. God Yi has come to the entrance of Eternal Life World. Hearing this, Yi Lingtian was stunned, then laughed, haha. He actually came to Eternal Life World. Interesting, huh? God Yi is here. Not only Yi clan, at this moment, the entire Eternal Life World knows. Who is God Yi? The most monstrous genius in the entire Eternal Life World. And now, he is back. In front of the Eternal Life Gate. Looking at the densely packed corpses around him, Yi Xian remained silent. These people are experts who want to enter Eternal Life World. And here, the lowest level is a concept expert. There are also many Eternal Realm experts. What does this mean? It means that the outside world is very different from Eternal Life World. At this moment, many obscure auras suddenly appeared in the surrounding space. Beside Yi Xian, Mu Sheng's expression changed drastically. These are the Yi clan's death guards, the bodyguards of that woman. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Don't panic." Mu Sheng glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. In the surroundings, the Yi clan's hidden experts did not make a move. At this moment, the gate of eternal life suddenly opened. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Let's go." As he spoke, he led everyone towards the door of eternal life. Right at this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly enveloped Yi Xian and the others. At the same time, a black-robed old man stood in front of Yi Xian and the others. The black-robed old man didn't waste any time and directly turned into an afterimage as he charged at Yi Xian. Obviously, he wanted to kill Yi Xian and prevent him from entering the immortal world. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly pointed angrily at the black-robed old man. "Impudent!" Boom! His voice was like thunder that shook the starry sky. The black-robed old man immediately stopped and looked at Yi Xian with a trace of fear in his eyes. God Yi! In the past, his prestige in the Yi clan had even surpassed Yi Lingtian's. Even though so many years had passed, the people of the Yi clan still feared him. Yi Xian looked at the black-robed old man with a cold smile. "How can an outsider like you interfere in a matter between mother and son? Get lost." A matter between mother and son. The corners of the black-robed old man's mouth twitched. This was indeed a matter between mother and son. What should he do? The black-robed old man was in a difficult position. Because up until now, the patriarch had not given him any instructions. Should he kill him or not? In his opinion, the patriarch definitely didn't want Yi Xian to return. However, he had some misgivings. What if he guessed wrong? At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly walked towards the gate of eternal life. The black-robed old man glanced at Yi Xian and was still hesitant. Should he do it or not? At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly sped up and turned into a sword light that entered the eternal world. The black-robed old man was speechless. Dao Yi and the others hurriedly followed. After entering the eternal world, Yi Xian looked around. He had to admit that the spiritual qi here was at least 100 times denser than the outside world. 100 times. What did that mean? The difference between cultivating here and cultivating outside was like heaven and earth. When Dao Yi saw the spiritual qi in this place, her expression became extremely solemn. The Yi clan was many times more terrifying than she had imagined. How terrifying were the forces in such a place? With this spiritual qi, even a good-for-nothing could cultivate to become a strong cultivator. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. At this moment, her eyes were filled with worry. The Yi clan was so powerful. How was her young master going to deal with it? Beside Yi Xian, Saint Mu and Dao Avicii's expressions were incomparably complicated. They had returned to this place again. However, things had remained the same, but the people had changed. Everything was different now. As if he had thought of something, Saint Mu quickly said, "Prince, let's go to the Shao clan." Yi Xian looked at Saint Mu. "The Shao clan?" Saint Mu nodded. "The Shao clan is now the #1 clan in the eternal world. Only they are not afraid of the Yi clan. We can go to the Shao clan and seek their protection." Yi Xian laughed. "Silly Saint Mu, do you feel the hidden auras around us?" Mu Sheng scanned his surroundings. There were countless powerful auras lurking in the dark. Yi Xian laughed. "If we go to the Shao clan now, these people will attack immediately. The reason why they haven't attacked us is because they don't know what our intentions are. But if we go and join the enemy, do you think they will let us go?" Saint Mu's face turned ugly. "Then what should we do now?" Yi Xian smiled. "Let's go to the Yi clan." Saint Mu was shocked. "Go to the Yi clan?" Yi Xian nodded. "They won't attack us only if we go to the Yi clan." Saint Mu said, "But once we go to the Yi clan, we won't be able to get out." Yi Xian smiled. "Can we go now?" Saint Mu looked around and shook his head. Yi Xian smiled, isn't that it? Let's go. Take me to the Yi clan. I want to see the place where God Yi grew up. Saint Mu looked at Yi Xian, all right. She walked away after saying that. Yi Xian and Dao Yi followed. When they saw Yi Xian and the others walking in the direction of the Yi clan, everyone was stunned. Are they going to the Yi clan? It wasn't just the experts from the other clans. Even the experts from the Yi clan were stunned. What is this prince trying to do? Somewhere in the dark, a young man suddenly laughed, interesting. The young man was followed by a woman in white. Both of them had a small, Xiao, character painted on their left chests. It was obvious that they were from the Xiao clan. The woman in white glanced at Yi Xian and the others in the distance. Is this the god Yi who stunned the entire Perseus back then? I don't think so. The young man shook his head. Qian, you can't say that. Back then, this person was the well-deserved number one in the Perseus realm. Not only the younger generation, but even the older generation couldn't suppress him. So far, no one has been able to break the record he set in overlooking Abyss Mountain. Overlooking Abyss. The woman in white's expression became solemn. The young man continued, when the ancestors mention God Yi, they all gasp in admiration. Even the family said that if the Yi clan hadn't changed back then, the Xiao clan wouldn't have become the number one clan in Perseus. Not only that, but the major clans in the entire Perseus realm will also be suppressed by God Yi. The woman in white said solemnly, it's not a good thing to be too outstanding. The young man smiled, that's true. However, this matter with the Yi clan is rare. After all, they don't want their son to surpass their mother, or... At this point, he seemed to be afraid of something and didn't continue. Although the Xiao clan was the number one clan in Perseus realm, he didn't have the right to talk about the Yi clan's clan leader, especially when this clan leader was extremely extraordinary. The number one ruthless person. This Yi Ling Tian of the Yi clan was the number one ruthless person in Perseus realm. He even dared to kill his own son. How was that not ruthless? In the distance, Yi Xian and the others had already disappeared. The woman in white suddenly said, "Second brother, what do you think his purpose for coming to the Yi clan this time?" The young man smiled, "I can't see through him." The woman in white said softly, "What's the attitude of the clan leader and the others? Do they want to intervene?" The young man smiled, "Why should we intervene? Let's just watch the show." As he spoke, he turned his head and glanced to the right. Not far to the right, there was also a man standing there. On the man's left chest, there was a small Gu character. Ancient clan. One of the four great clans of Perseus realm. The young man cupped his fists and smiled, "So it's brother Gu Lai. You're here too." In the distance, the man called Gu Lai glanced at the young man. "Xiao Ju, what's the attitude of your Xiao clan?" Xiao Ju laughed, "This is the matter of the Yi clan. What does it have to do with our Xiao clan?" Gu Lai said indifferently, "What if God Yi admits his mistake and the Yi clan accepts him again?" Xiao Ju blinked, "Brother Gu Lai, are you joking?" Gu Lai chuckled, "It's not impossible, isn't it?" Xiao Ju laughed, "Brother Gu Lai, back then, tens of thousands of people died tragically in the Yi clan. Do you think this blood debt can be easily erased?" Gu Lai looked into the distance and smiled, "I said what if?" Xiao Ju narrowed his eyes and his smile gradually froze. Gu Lai shrugged. "Your Xiao clan should know best how terrifying God Yi was back then. If he returns to the Yi clan, do you think our Perseus realm will be reshuffled? Huh." After saying that, he turned and left. In the same place, Xiao Ju's expression was calm, no one knew what he was thinking. Yi clan. Under the lead of Mu Sheng, Yi Xian and the others arrived at Yi World in a short while. This was a small world that the Yi clan had opened up in the immortal world and enjoyed the spiritual energy of this small world alone. When entering Yi world, Yi Xian saw a huge ancient city. The ancient city floated in the air and covered an area of 1,000 miles. It was extremely imposing. Yi City. When they arrived in front of the city gate of Yi City, there were 19 people hanging above the city gate. The 19 people's deaths were extremely tragic. Their bodies were covered with all kinds of small blood-red nails. In addition, there was a cloud-colored flame under their feet. When seeing the 19 people, Mu Sheng, who was standing beside Yi Xian, immediately looked ferocious. "Crown Prince, they are the 19 divine generals who followed you back then. How vicious!" At this moment, the beast god's voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind, "Kid, they are not dead, but their souls are imprisoned in their bodies. Moreover, they are being tortured by a terrifying forbidden technique. This kind of pain. Even I am afraid that I can't bear it." Suddenly, the leading man above the city gate seemed to feel something. He suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Yi Xian below. When he saw Yi Xian, the man was slightly stunned. In the next moment, tears flowed from his eyes. "Crown Prince," the other 18 people also opened their eyes. The moment they saw Yi Xian, the tears in their eyes instantly burst like a dam. For countless years, they tortured their souls day and night, but none of them made a sound. None of them begged for mercy. At this moment, the 19 people were crying like a child. P.S. Happy birthday to Miss Deng Shuchuan. Although it is a few days late. Chapter 1699. It was silent in front of the city gate. Yi Xian looked at the people hanging on the city wall. His expression was calm, but his right hand had unknowingly tightened. A moment later, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. He held Dao Yi's hand with his right hand and whispered, "Dao Yi, I wasn't worthy of your love in the past." Dao Yi was silent. She had fused with Yi Xian's soul before, so she could clearly feel Yi Xian's emotions at that moment. She knew that Yi Xian was different from God Yi. Their personalities were very different. If it was Yi Xian back then, what would Yi Xian do? Would he escape? No. He would never escape. He would do everything he could to fight the Yi clan to the death. Even if he died, he would never abandon his brothers. However, God Yi was gone. Thinking to this point, Dao Yi sighed in his heart. At that moment, Yi Xian suddenly walked to the city gate and looked up at the 19 people. "Do you regret it?" The man in the lead laughed maniacally. "Never." Yi Xian nodded slightly, then walked into the city. At that moment, the man in the lead suddenly said, "Prince." Yi Xian stopped and looked at the man. The man stared at Yi Xian. "Prince, if you were to go back in time, what would you do?" Yi Xian asked in return, "Do you have any resentment?" The man looked at Yi Xian, tears flowing from his eyes. "I have no regrets, but I do have resentment. Under my command, 3,600 brothers fought to the death. They died a terrible death. Not only did they die, but several of their clans were also killed." At that point, he suddenly roared, "Prince, if you were to go back in time, would you still not resist?" Back then, when God Yi learned that his mother wanted to kill him, he did not really resist. That was the man's resentment. Yi Xian looked at the man. "If I were to go back in time, I would fight to the death with all of you." Having said that, he turned and walked into the city. Behind him, the man laughed crazily. The other 18 people also laughed loudly. But after laughing and laughing, she started to cry. At this moment, Yi Xian's voice came from afar, "Live well. Live well." On top of the city gate, the man in the lead slowly closed his eyes. "Crown Prince. We've lost the upper hand. We no longer have a chance." After entering the city, it was abnormally quiet. There was not a single person on the wide streets. Dao Yi followed beside Yi Xian, holding onto Yi Xian's hand tightly. At this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared not far from Yi Xian. The middle-aged man was wearing a long black robe. His back was ramrod straight, and he held a piece of warm jade in his hand. Beside Yi Xian, Mu Sheng and the other man quickly bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Guardian Yi Xian." Yi Tian. This person was the guardian of the Yi clan. Yi Tian looked at Yi Xian. "Walk with me." Yi Xian nodded. "All right." Yi Xian and Yi Tian walked into the distance, while Dao Yi and the other two followed behind slowly. After walking for a long time, Yi Tian suddenly asked, "Why did you come to the Yi clan?" Yi Xian smiled. "I had nowhere else to go." Yi Tian glanced at Yi Xian. "There's a way out here?" Yi Xian shrugged. "I wanted to try." Yi Tian shook his head. "You no longer have a chance." "Very straightforward." Yi Xian said with a smile, "Can you beat her?" Yi Tian shook his head. "Not now. Because she has the authority of the clan leader and that sacred relic." Yi Xian nodded slightly. As if thinking of something, he asked again, "Why didn't she kill you?" Yi Tian glanced at Yi Xian. "Can't think of it." Yi Xian smiled. "You're already on her side." Yi Tian nodded. "If not, the Yi clan will really split." He paused for a moment before continuing, "Do you blame me?" Yi Xian shook his head. "How can I blame you?" Yi Tian shook his head. "If I had been more vigilant back then, things wouldn't have come to this." Yi Xian smiled. "Back then, I didn't even think of resisting, right?" Yi Tian nodded. "She's your closest relative. Before that, your relationship was very good." She looked at Yi Xian. "Don't blame him for being weak back then. That woman could kill her son, but that doesn't mean he could kill his mother." At that time, he was a little disheartened. Yi Xian did not speak. Indeed, anyone who encountered such a situation would feel pain in the ass. Yi Tian said softly, "The Yi clan can't afford any more infighting. Do you understand what I mean?" Yi Xian smiled. "I don't understand." Yi Tian looked at Yi Xian. "Since you dared to come back, you must have something to rely on. And now, you have many unknown karma, not just from the Yi clan. After you reincarnated, this life of yours is not simple. You want to use the karma of this life to fight against your previous life." Hearing this, Yi Xian's heart trembled. How terrifying. As the guardian of the Yi clan, Yi Tian is indeed not simple. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and smiled. "Senior, do you think there is any force that can fight against the Yi clan?" Yi Tian said softly, "Under normal circumstances, there are no forces outside the eternal world. However, nothing is absolute. There is always someone stronger than you. If there is a force stronger than the eternal world outside, would not be surprised." Yi Xian looked at Yi Tian, a trace of surprise flashing in his eyes. The Yi clan is not full of arrogance. Yi Tian looked around. In that war, the Yi clan lost too many elites, so much so that we have not fully recovered. If it happens again, the Yi clan will be gone. Yi Xian said with a smile, "She wants me dead." Yi Tian did not speak. Yi Xian said again, "This time, I will not sit still and wait for death." Yi Tian's eyes flashed with a trace of worry. "If you dare to say such words, it proves that the force behind you is stronger than I thought." Saying this, he glanced at Yi Xian. "This time, you came back for revenge." Yi Xian smiled. "No. I came back this time, I just want to live." Yi Tian looked at Yi Xian. "If she wants to kill you, no one in the entire eternal world can stop her. Not even me." Unless the ancestor's soul reappears, but only she can summon the ancestor's soul. Moreover, even if the ancestor's soul appears, it may not necessarily stand on your side. Do you understand? Yi Xian nodded. I understand. Right now, he had already lost his momentum. He used to be the most monstrous person in the Yi clan. If the ancestor's soul appears, he will not let that woman act recklessly. The other elders of the Yi clan will also stop her. But now, those who once supported him were basically gone. Even this Yi Tian will not support him now. To put it simply, he has no value now. Yi Tian suddenly stopped. Not far from the two of them, there stood a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man wore armor and held a sheathed long sword in his hand. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian, not saying a word. Yi Xian has already guessed this person's identity. This person is definitely Commander Yi Qian. One of the three people who helped him before. At this time, Yi Qian suddenly turned and left. Yi Tian said softly. I can only send you here. Yi Xian nodded. Thank you. Yi Tian pointed at the hall in the distance. She is inside. Once you enter, it is uncertain whether you will live or die. I cannot help you. Yi Xian nodded. Understood. Yi Tian lightly patted Yi Xian's shoulder. Take care. With that, he turned and left. At this time, Dao Yi and the other two came to Yi Xian's side. Dao Yi looked at the hall in the distance. I will go with you. Yi Xian smiled. I will go alone. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said softly. Let me face it alone. Dao Yi slightly lowered his head, not saying a word. Yi Xian took out a token and placed it in Dao Yi's hand. He smiled. If I die inside, tell Qing and Dad that except for those two, all the Yi clan members must die. Don't leave a single one alive. With that, he turned and walked towards the hall. Dao Yi looked at the Swordmaster's token in her hand and remained silent. She knew that Yi Xian had given her a life-saving token. Will Yi Xian die? Dao Yi looked into the distance. Her eyes flashed with a trace of complexity. She knew that even Yi Xian doesn't have 100% confidence. He is really risking his life. Dao Yi looked at the Swordmaster's token in her hand. At this moment, she has a doubt in her heart. If I use the Swordmaster's token, will experts come to Eternal World? Can the green-robed man's Sword Dao alliance resist the terrifying Yi clan? The answer is unknown. Because at present, the Leaf clan was very, very strong. In the distance, Yi Xian arrived in front of the hall. A black-robed old man stood in front of the hall. The hunchbacked old man stared at Yi Xian like a sword. He didn't hide his killing intent. Yi Xian looked at the hunchbacked old man and said with a smile. Want to kill me? The hunchbacked old man said in a hoarse voice. You think I don't dare? Yi Xian walked towards the hunchbacked old man and said with a smile. Come. The hunchbacked old man squinted his eyes and slowly clenched his right hand. Yi Xian said with a smile. Master didn't say anything. As a dog, how would you dare to make a move? Am I right? The hunchbacked old man grinned. Prince is right. This old servant is a dog of the patriarch. But what about Prince? I'm afraid Prince is worse than a dog now. Yi Xian blinked. Are you saying that your master's son is worse than a dog? The smile on the hunchbacked old man's face froze. Yi Xian laughed. A dog is a dog. You have to look at your master's face for everything you do. What surprised me is that as a dog, you actually have a sense of superiority. You are even more shameless than Xiao Ta. Xiao Ta was suddenly dissatisfied. Young master, when was I shameless? Yi Xian smiled. I forgot that you are in my body. Next time I will say bad things about you when you are not here. Xiao Ta, Yi Xian didn't care about the hunchbacked old man anymore. He walked towards the hall in the distance. Behind him, the hunchbacked old man stared at Yi Xian. His face was gloomy and scary. After Yi Xian entered the hall, the entire hall was empty and quiet. Yi Xian looked into the distance. A woman was sitting there. The woman was looking at the memorial in her hand. She seemed very busy. Yi Xian smiled. He walked in front of the woman. At this time, the woman suddenly said, "In order to prevent you from being lonely, I brought your friends and relatives to a mortal world." Saying that, she looked at Yi Xian and the corners of her mouth raised slightly. Is mother treating you well? Chapter 1700. They were all brought to the eternal world. Yi Xian looked at Yi Lingtian before him. A moment later, he smiled. This place is rich in spiritual energy. It's a good thing that they came here. A good thing. In the distance, Yi Lingtian's lips curled up slightly. It's indeed a good thing. Yi Xian looked around. Can I ask a few questions? Yi Lingtian's Tendo replied, Sure. She paused for a moment before continuing, Don't ask those childish questions. Yi Xian asked, Can I see the eternal qi? Yi Lingtian opened her palm, and a wisp of spiritual energy suddenly floated in front of Yi Xian. The spiritual energy was pure white without a trace of impurities. It was extremely pure. After Yi Xian took a closer look at the eternal qi, he realized that it was different from Little White's primordial violet energy. It had different effects. Little White's violet energy was not inferior to the eternal qi, but her violet energy did not have the ability to prolong one's life. Moreover, the eternal qi did not have the recovery ability of the violet energy. At this moment, Yi Lingtian suddenly closed the memorial in her hand. She stood up and walked to Yi Xian before handing the memorial to Yi Xian. Take a look. Yi Xian took the memorial and opened it. It was filled with information about him. Everything that happened in Qingqing up until now, every little thing was clearly recorded in the records. Yi Lingtian smiled. Turn to the last page. Yi Xian flipped to the last page. There were only 2 words on the last page, Tianming, Yang Yi. His father and Qing, Yi Lingtian smiled. These 2 people are the reason why you dare to come here. Am I right? Yi Xian retorted. That's why you let me come here, right? Yi Lingtian smiled. What do you think? Yi Xian walked to the side and sat down. He looked at Yi Lingtian. I think there's no point in playing tricks. So, I won't keep a low profile. That's right, I have someone, I have a backer. Yi Lingtian looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Are you threatening me? Yi Xian laughed and said, Come, kill me. The smile on Yi Ling's lips gradually disappeared. Yi Xian walked in front of Yi Lingtian and looked him in the eye. I'm begging for death. Die. As soon as these words were spoken, the entire hall suddenly became silent. In the dark, the hunchbacked old man glanced at Yi Xian. His eyes were still filled with killing intent, but at this moment, he was even more shocked. No one had ever dared to be so arrogant in front of the patriarch. Never. Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, Kill me, and you'll be able to get rid of any future troubles. So, what are you waiting for? Yi Lingtian suddenly stretched out her finger and placed it between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Her lips curled into a smile. Do you think I don't dare? Yi Xian blinked. Come on. I definitely won't fight back. Yi Lingtian looked at Yi Xian and pointed her finger between Yi Xian's eyebrows. As long as this finger landed, Yi Xian would definitely die. The current Yi Xian would definitely not be able to fight against her. The entire hall fell silent once again. After a moment, Yi Lingtian suddenly retracted her hand and smiled. "Silly child, mother can't be more than happy to see you. Why would she kill you?" As she spoke, she looked at the hunchbacked old man not far away. "Ugly slave, take the crown prince back to rest." Ugly slave glanced at Yi Xian. "Crown prince, please." Yi Xian smiled. "Then I'll go back to rest first. If there's anything that Patriarch Yi can't figure out, you can ask me at any time." With that, he turned and left. Yi Lingtian watched as Yi Xian left with a calm expression. No one knew what she was thinking. After a while, Ugly Slave returned to the hall. Ugly Slave bowed slightly. "Patriarch, this kid is just a fox pretending to be a tiger." Yi Lingtian glanced at Ugly Slave. "Do you really think he's a fox pretending to be a tiger?" Ugly Slave looked at Yi Lingtian. "Could it be that the person behind him is stronger than our Yi clan?" Yi Lingtian looked up at the sky and smiled. "Ugly Slave, in this vast universe, do you think our Yi clan is invincible?" "Invincible?" Ugly Slave hesitated and did not speak. Although the Yi clan was strong, they were certainly not invincible. At least in this immortal world. Yi Lingtian chuckled. "He's not a fox pretending to be a tiger. The two people behind him are indeed not simple. Of course, this is not the reason why I didn't kill him. Keeping him alive has too many uses." Ugly Slave was a little puzzled. "What uses?" Yi Lingtian smiled. "After killing him back then, our Yi clan's younger generation had no successor. As a result, our Yi clan's younger generation was crushed by the other clans. This also caused us to have no right to speak in the Immortal Mountain Range." Immortal Mountain Range. Ugly Slave was silent. It had to be said that after God Yi, the entire Yi clan had never produced a decent genius. There was no successor. Ugly Slave said in a deep voice, "Clan leader wants to use him to fight against other clans and fight for our Yi clan's right to speak in the Immortal Mountain Range?" Yi Lingtian smiled. "Now the Shao clan and the others must be waiting to see our Yi clan make a fool of themselves. Some clans are even thinking of secretly supporting him in an attempt to disgust our Yi clan. Say, if he suddenly becomes a sword of our Yi clan, a sword that pierces them, what kind of expression do you think they will have?" Ugly Slave said in a deep voice, "Clan leader, he's not easy to control. Moreover, if he grows up," at this point, he did not continue. "Back then, God Yi grew too fast, so fast that he was out of the control of the clan leader, which led to the subsequent events." Yi Lingtian slowly closed his eyes. "The current him can't make any waves." Ugly Slave nodded slightly and said no more. The current Yi clan, even Yi Tian and Yi Qian would not stand on Yi Xian's side. In the past, God Yi could bring the Yi clan to a higher level and even completely change the Yi family. That was why he had so many supporters. And now? From the Yi clan's point of view, the current Yi Xian was very ordinary. Moreover, those who were loyal to Yi Xian back then had basically been eradicated. It was impossible for the current Yi Xian to overthrow the Yi clan. At that moment, Yi Lingtian suddenly said, "You may leave." Ugly Slave bowed slightly and quietly left. At that moment, Yi Lingtian said again, "Go and investigate the two people behind him." In the dark, a voice quietly sounded. "Yes." Yi Lingtian chuckled. "I didn't kill you not because I'm afraid of the people behind you, but because I want to play with you." After saying that, she turned and walked toward the inner hall. After Yi Xian left the hall, he walked in front of Dao Yi and said with a smile, "It's fine now." Dao Yi placed the Swordmaster token in Yi Xian's hand. "That's good." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Let's go." After saying that, he led Dao Yi and the other two to the city gate. He looked at the 19 people who were hanging, and the next moment, he drew his sword. At that moment, an old man suddenly appeared in front of him. The old man looked coldly at Yi Xian. Without the family head's order, no one is allowed to release them. Yi Xian did not waste any time. He dashed forward and drew out his sword to strike. Sword drawing technique. At that moment, he directly used the beast god incantation and the power of bloodline. Seeing that Yi Xian made his move, a trace of hostility flashed in the old man's eyes, and he directly punched. With that punch, a river of time appeared in front of him. Rumble. As Yi Xian's sword slashed down, the river of time shook violently, and the old man behind it instantly retreated several hundred feet. The moment the old man stopped, Yi Xian had already saved the 18 people. The old man's expression turned fierce, and he was about to attack again when suddenly, a voice suddenly sounded in his mind. The old man instantly stopped. In the distance, Yi Xian looked at the man who led the group. "What's your name?" The man replied, "Zhu Yan." Yi Xian opened his palm, and countless strands of violet energy surged out from it. After he absorbed the violet energy, Zhu Yan's internal injuries started to recover swiftly. Zhu Yan shook his head. "One of our souls is in that woman's hands." Yi Xian frowned when he heard this. Meanwhile, Yi Lingtian suddenly appeared before the city gate. She gazed at Yi Xian and smiled. "I didn't expect you to be so impatient. Since it's like that, then let's hurry up. It's not impossible to save them, but there's a condition." Yi Xian gazed at Yi Lingtian. "What condition?" Yi Lingtian smiled. "There are 6 eternal crystal ores in the Eternal Mountain Range, and my Yi clan doesn't have a single one. I want you to fight for one for my Yi clan. Moreover, I don't want another clans. I want the Hera clans." "The Hera clan?" Yi Xian said with a smile. "You have such a good plan." "That's great." Yi Lingtian smiled. "You can refuse." With that, she waved her jade-like hand lightly. Zhu Yan and the others were hung up again. Yi Lingtian looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "I'm not in a hurry. I can wait. Come and find me after you've thought it through." With that, she turned and left. At that moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, "There's no need to think about it. I'll go now." Yi Lingtian stopped and turned to look at Yi Xian. "I forgot to mention one thing. The Yi clan won't provide you with any help. You have to fight for it yourself." Yi Xian smiled. "Sure. However, I also have a condition. That is to let them down first and give them some face. This isn't too much to ask, right?" Yi Lingtian smiled. "What if I say it's too much?" Yi Xian shook his head. "If you think it's too much for such a small matter, then I think there's no need for us to talk." Yi Lingtian smiled. "Actually, whether it's too much or not depends on your strength. Right now, your strength makes me think it's too much because I think you're not qualified to negotiate with me. If you're strong enough, I think this is a very, very small matter." "Of course." With that, she paused, then continued, "For you, I can make an exception. After all, you're my son." With that, she waved her jade-like hand lightly. Zhu Yan and the others were immediately released. Yi Lingtian looked at Yi Xian. "I'll wait for your good news." Yi Xian suddenly said, "You won't go back on your word, right?" Yi Lingtian smiled. "To me, not only are the 19 of them no threat, they're also useless. Whether I kill them or not depends on my mood. So, don't worry. If you can get the Eternal Crystal Mine in the Eternal Mountain Range, I'll let them go." Yi Xian stared at Yi Lingtian. "What if you break your promise?" Yi Lingtian blinked. "Then I'll end my line and the next generation will die." Yi Xian's expression froze. At this moment, he was on the verge of exploding. P.S. Whenever the monthly tickets are low, I will reflect on myself. Could it be that there were too few updates? Or is it water again? Chapter 1701. Die without descendants. Hearing this, Yi Xian's face instantly darkened. What kind of words are these? Yi Lingtian laughed, turned around, and left. Beside Yi Xian, Dao Yi suddenly said softly, "This woman has no feelings." No feelings. Yi Xian nodded, he had actually felt it. In the past, he had heard Sister Nian say that many people, the longer they live, the more heartless they become. In their hearts, there was only eternal life and the great Tao. Other than that, everything else was fleeting. However, he did not understand why Qing was so sentimental. No, Qing was only good to him from beginning to end. To others, Qing was even scarier than the Yi clan leader. At this moment, Dao Yi suddenly said, "Are you really going to the everlasting mountain range to fight for that or crystal?" Yi Xian nodded. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian, "You should know her goal." Yi Xian smiled, "I know." Dao Yi said, "Do you have a plan?" Yi Xian nodded, he walked in front of Zhu Yan and the others, he opened his palm, and some great Dao source crystals appeared in front of them. "You all take care of your injuries." With that, he turned around and left. Zhu Yan suddenly said, "She wants to use you." Yi Xian nodded, "I know." Zhu Yan shook his head, "Crown Prince, we are doomed." Yi Xian smiled, "Are we just going to wait for death?" With that, he led Dao Yi and the others into the distance. Behind him, Zhu Yan sighed softly. In the main hall. Yi Lingtian stood in the middle of the main hall, in front of him was Ugly Slave. Yi Lingtian suddenly smiled, "Ugly Slave, what do you think he will do?" Ugly Slave shook his head, "I don't know." Yi Lingtian smiled, "I'm looking forward to it." Ugly Slave wanted to say something but hesitated. Yi Lingtian looked at Ugly Slave, "Do you want me to directly kill him to avoid future trouble?" The Ugly Slave nodded. "This person isn't simple either. If we leave him alive, he will be a disaster in the future." Yi Lingtian shook his head. "It's not the right time to kill him now." Ugly Slave didn't understand, why. Yi Lingtian opened his palm and a black scroll floated in front of Ugly Slave. Ugly Slave opened it and took a look. Gradually, his expression became solemn. Yi Lingtian smiled and said, "The two people behind him are not simple. As for how strong they are, our people have yet to figure it out." Ugly Slave hesitated for a moment before he said, "That woman in a plain dress killed them with a single strike of her sword. Now that I think about it, it really is quite terrifying. However, Patriarch, don't forget that she killed people outside the immortal world, and the people outside are as weak as chickens. Not to mention the Patriarch, even if this old servant goes out, I can also kill people with only one move." Yi Lingtian said with a smile, "So, in your opinion, that woman in a plain dress is only ordinary?" The Ugly Slave nodded. "This woman's strength is just an exaggeration. This old slave asserts that she is at most at the peak of the eternity realm." Yi Lingtian smiled and didn't say anything. Ugly Slave said again, "If the Patriarch doesn't believe me, this old servant is willing to personally meet this person and bring his head to see the Patriarch." Yi Lingtian glanced at Ugly Slave and still didn't say anything. Ugly Slave continued, "If you don't bring his head, this old servant is willing to be punished." Yi Lingtian pondered for a moment and said, "Then go and meet this person." The last place this person appeared was the ruins of God. You should be able to catch up to her if you follow the ruins of God. Remember, if you can't beat her, retreat immediately." Ugly Slave bowed slightly. "Patriarch, don't worry. This old servant will definitely bring back his head." After saying that, he turned around and disappeared. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded behind Yi Lingtian, this subordinate also suggests that we kill this person first to avoid future trouble. Yi Lingtian looked out of the hall and said with a smile, "It's okay, play with him first. It won't be too late to kill him after we're tired of playing with him." After saying that, she turned around and left. After Yi Xian left Yi World, he went straight to the Hera clan. On the way, Dao Yi said in a deep voice, "She wants to kill with a borrowed knife. She wants to disgust you and the Hera clan. She wants the entire eternal world to hate you and get rid of you." Yi Xian nodded. "I know." Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. "How do we break out of this situation?" Yi Xian said with a smile, "Even the two of us can guess her thoughts. It's impossible for the eternal world's forces to not think of it." Dao Yi glanced at Yi Xian. "Don't keep me in suspense. Tell me your plan." Yi Xian raised 2 fingers. "Bluff. Bluff." Dao Yi was stunned. At this moment, Mu Sheng couldn't help but say, "Prince, these big families are not so easy to bluff." Yi Xian chuckled and didn't say anything. Mu Sheng sighed in his heart. After a while, everyone arrived at Hela Realm. As soon as they entered the Hela Realm, an old man appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at the old man. "Is it Miss Harayan who is looking for me?" The old man was slightly taken aback. "How do you know?" Yi Xian smiled. "Lead the way." The old man glanced at Yi Xian and said, "Follow me." After saying that, he turned and left. Yi Xian brought Dao Yi and the others and followed. After a while, the old man brought Yi Xian and the others to the foot of a mountain. The old man looked at Yi Xian. "Only you can go up." Yi Xian turned to look at Dao Yi. "Wait for me." Dao Yi nodded. Yi Xian rode his sword and went straight to the top of the mountain. At the top of the mountain, he saw a woman. Harayan. The former fiancée of God Yi. Harayan had her back facing Yi Xian and did not say a word. Yi Xian walked to Harayan's side and she said softly, "Things remain the same, but people have changed." Yi Xian nodded. "Indeed." Harayan turned to look at Yi Xian. At that moment, Yi Xian also saw Harayan's face. Beautiful. That was Yi Xian's first impression. Harayan's facial features were extremely exquisite and flawless. Coupled with the snow-white dress she was wearing, she looked like an otherworldly fairy. Harayan suddenly said, "You're not him." Clearly, she could tell that Yi Xian had yet to awaken. Yi Xian smiled. "I just temporarily lost my memory." Temporarily lost his memory. Hearing that, Harayan's right hand trembled slightly. How could she not understand what Yi Xian meant? He was God Yi. He just lost his memory. That did not seem to be wrong. Yi Xian said softly, "I need your help." Harayan shook her head. "The Hera clan won't hand that gold mine over to you. Not only is it related to profit, but it's also related to their reputation. Moreover, the clan isn't particularly friendly toward you now." Yi Xian smiled. "Because of the Yi clan?" Harayan shook her head. "Because of you." Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then said, "Are you blaming me for not resisting back then?" Harayan nodded. Yi Xian said with a smile, "Can I talk to the leader of the Hera clan?" Harayan nodded slightly. "Yes. Follow me." Having said that, she turned around and saw a middle-aged man standing not far away. That person was the Hera clan leader, Harayan. Harayan looked at Yi Xian calmly. "Compared to back then, you're much weaker now." Yi Xian smiled. "Senior, I'll cut to the chase. I'll get straight to the point. I'm here to help the Hera clan." Harayan smiled. "Help my Hera clan?" Yi Xian nodded. "I have 2 goals for coming to Eternal World this time. First, to destroy the Yi clan. Second, to help the Hera clan. Aurelian smiled and said, "Go on." Yi Xian smiled. "Senior, you don't believe me?" Aurelian looked at Yi Xian. "You want the Immortal Mountain Range's gold mine?" Yi Xian shook his head. "Senior, do you think I came to Eternal World just to serve that woman?" Aurelian nodded. "I don't think so. However, I feel that you have no chance of winning. Not to mention the current you, even if you awaken now, you won't have the ability to fight against that woman. Right now, the Yi clan is under her control, including Yi Tian and Yi Qian who helped you before. Moreover, my Hera clan has no need to become enemies with the Yi clan. What do you think?" Yi Xian smiled. "That woman asked me to rob your Hera clan's gold mine. Moreover, I can only rob your Hera clan's gold mine. Senior, do you know what this means? It means that woman still holds a grudge against me for what happened back then." Aurelian smiled. "Isn't it normal for her to hold a grudge against me for what happened back then? Moreover, why does she hold a grudge against me for what happened back then? Isn't it because of you? Back then, my Hera clan didn't hesitate to go to war with the Yi clan for you, but what did we get in return? Nothing at all." Yi Xian said softly. "I'm very sorry for what happened back then." Aurelian shook his head. "It's all in the past. Now, we don't want to have anything to do with you or the Yi clan." Yi Xian suddenly operated the bloodline in his body. Boom! A powerful bloodline aura swept out from his body. Aurelian frowned. "Your bloodline isn't the Yi clan's bloodline," Yi Xian smiled. "Then in Senior's opinion, how does my bloodline compare to the Yi clan's bloodline?" Aurelian stared at Yi Xian. "You really aren't simple in this life." Yi Xian walked up to Aurelian and said seriously, "To tell you the truth, I've already received the support of a mysterious force. I came to the Eternal World this time to eliminate the Yi clan and reshuffle the entire Eternal World." Aurelian narrowed his eyes. "Mysterious force? What force?" Yi Xian smiled. "Can't you guess, Senior?" Aurelian seemed to have thought of something. His pupils suddenly shrank. "Moke Divine Clan." Yi Xian immediately looked around and said, "Senior, be careful with your words." Aurelian stared at Yi Xian. "Is that woman back?" Yi Xian shook his head. "Not yet. But she'll be back soon." After a moment of silence, Aurelian said, "About what happened back then, my Hera clan," Yi Xian smiled. "Don't worry, uncle. We won't target the Hera clan. However, I would like uncle to cooperate with me." As he spoke, he took out thousands of great Tao origin crystals and placed them in front of Aurelian. "I'll borrow these crystals for a while. When the time comes, I'll return them intact. At the same time, I'll borrow someone from Senior. The Moke celestial race and I will definitely repay this favor in the future." Aurelian took a look at those great Tao source crystals. These things aren't simple. It's basically impossible for them to exist in the outside world. Yi Xian smiled but said nothing. Aurelian remained silent for a long time before he said, "Who do you want to borrow?" Yi Xian glanced at Aurelian. "I want to borrow Miss Aurelian." Aurelian immediately shook his head. "No." Yi Xian immediately said, "Then let's borrow the old man who brought us up." Aurelian's expression froze. Chapter 1702. Aurelian finally understood. The one Yi Xian really wanted to borrow was Qi Lao. Aurelian looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. Yi Xian said, "Senior, don't worry. That Senior is following me. He doesn't need to do anything. He just needs to follow me. No matter what happens, he doesn't need to do anything." Heralia was about to speak when Heralia suddenly said, "I'll follow you." Heralia looked at Heralia. Heralia said softly, "Give me a drop of your blood." Yi Xian pointed and a drop of blood floated in front of Heralia. Heralia opened her palm and caught the drop of blood. After looking at it for a while, she turned to look at Heralia. "It's above my clan's bloodline. Above the Hera clan's bloodline." Heralia was silent. Heralia said again, "Father, don't worry. I will always put the clan first." Heralia sighed softly. "Girl," at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Uncle, don't worry. In this life, I will not go back on my word. At all times, I will put her first." Hearing this, Heralia's body trembled slightly. She turned to look at Yi Xian and did not speak. Heralia looked at Yi Xian. "In this life, you are a man." After saying this, he turned and left. Yi Xian looked at Heralia. "Lady Yan, let's go." Heralia nodded slightly. Soon, the two left. Fo. On the other side, Heralia stood on the clouds and looked down at Yi Xian and the others silently. At this moment, a woman in palace attire appeared beside Heralia. The woman looked at Yi Xian and said softly, "Why?" Heralia said, "Yan wants to help him." The woman smiled. "I'm afraid it's not that simple, right?" Heralia nodded. The woman said in a low voice, "Do you really believe that the person behind him is Goddess Moku?" Heralian said softly, "Whether it's Goddess Moku or not, there's one thing we can be sure of. The person behind him is definitely not simple." The woman nodded. "Since this boy dares to come to a mortal world, he must have something to rely on. However, he still has no chance of winning." Heralian smiled and said, "Just wait and see." The woman suddenly asked, "Why is he borrowing people?" Heralian shook his head. "I don't know." The woman looked into the distance and said softly, "Will there be no return?" Heralian's face immediately darkened. Yi Xian took Herayan and left the Hela realm. Under Herayan's lead, everyone went straight to the everlasting mountain range. On the way, Herayan suddenly asked, "What are your plans?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Alive." Hera glanced at Yi Xian. "Are you willing to join the Hera clan?" Yi Xian shook his head. If he chose to join the Hera clan now, Ming and the others would die. After all, Ming and the others were now in the Yi clan. It had to be said that this woman had some tricks up her sleeve. He had just arrived at the Yi clan and was already in a passive position. Thinking of this, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. If this woman did not have some tricks up her sleeves, she would not have become the Yi clan leader. It was not a good thing for the enemy to be too smart. At this moment, Herayan suddenly said, "We're here." Everyone stopped. In the distance, there was a mountain range. Between the mountains, clouds and mist lingered, like a fairyland. Everlasting mountain range. Herayan said, "Do you know anything about Immortal World?" Yi Xian nodded. "A little, but I still want to hear more from you." Herayan nodded slightly. In Immortal World, there are 4 great clans and 2 sections. Now, the first great clan is the Shao clan, followed by the Yi clan, and then the Hera clan and the Gu clan. The Shao clan rose due to the internal strife of the Yi clan. Now, their top experts are far above the Yi clan. However, the Shao clan does not dare to underestimate the Yi clan because the woman of the Yi clan is very strong. She is one of the 4 top experts of Immortal World. In addition, the Yi clan also has a group of mysterious experts. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Mysterious experts? Herayan nodded. When she dealt with you, 10 mysterious experts appeared in the Yi clan. It was these 10 people who got rid of the elders who supported you. And those elders were very strong. The strength of these 10 people is still a mystery to this day. Therefore, even though many experts died in the internal strife of the Yi clan, no one in a mortal world dared to underestimate them. Speaking of this, she glanced at Yi Xian. Even now, under her leadership, the Yi clan is still not afraid of the Shao clan. Yi Xian said softly. So, she is indeed stronger than God Yi. Wrong. Harayan looked at Yi Xian. When you were here, the Yi clan was the real peak, even surpassing the once terrifying Moke clan. At that time, the Yi clan suppressed all of our clans. And at that time, if you wanted to rebel against her, you had a chance because most of the elders supported you. Unfortunately, you never thought of it that way. God Yi. Yi Xian nodded slightly. Now it seemed that God Yi was indeed very outstanding back then, so outstanding that that woman had no choice but to launch a surprise attack. Harayan said again, there are also 2 sects, the hidden sect and the divine sect. Both sects are not simple. Yi Xian suddenly asked, why did the former Moke clan disappear? Harayan said softly, because they angered everyone and wanted to monopolize the entire immortal world. Therefore, everyone joined forces and killed them. Yi Xian said in a low voice, all forces joined forces? Harayan nodded. That time, all forces joined forces. Speaking of this, she was silent for a moment and said softly, the Moke clan was destroyed, and the Yi clan gained the most from that. As they spoke, everyone entered the immortal mountain range. Under Harayan's lead, everyone arrived in front of a mountain. Harayan looked at the mountain in front of him. This is the gold mine that our Hera clan controls. It belongs to you now. Yi Xian glanced at the cave and said, there are ores inside. Harayan said, the eternal life crystal is mixed, but it is still useful. Yi Xian took out a great Tao origin crystal. How does it compare to this? Harayan glanced at the great Tao origin crystal and said, this is not bad. It is much better than this low-grade eternal life crystal. However, it cannot compare to a top-grade eternal life crystal. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. When you took this out, my father was very shocked. That's because the great Tao origin of the outside world has basically been sucked dry by the immortal world. Yi Xian was stunned. It's been sucked dry? Harayan nodded. The main reason why the great Tao origin of the outside world disappeared so quickly is that it has been constantly being absorbed by the immortal world. However, the people outside don't know. Yi Xian said in a low voice, no wonder the spiritual energy here is so dense. So that's why. Harayan looked at the great Tao origin crystal in Yi Xian's hand. When we saw this, the first thought that came to my father's mind was that there are worlds outside that the immortal world doesn't know about. Yi Xian didn't say anything. His father said that he wanted to look around, but he hadn't come to the immortal world. In other words, his father might have gone somewhere else. Where exactly did he go? And this Sword Tao alliance? Just how strong was this Sword Tao alliance? He didn't know. It was precisely because he didn't know that he wouldn't place all his hopes on the Sword Alliance. If he couldn't rely on it, then wouldn't both of them be in pain? At this moment, Harayan suddenly said, the members of my Hera clan have already retreated. Now, this ore vein is yours. What are you going to do? Yi Xian glanced at the ore vein. To the Shao clan. Harayan looked at Yi Xian. To the Shao clan? Yi Xian nodded. Harayan said in a low voice, you're not going back to the Yi clan? Yi Xian smiled. Not for now. With that, he turned and left. Dao Yi and the other 2 followed him. Harayan was silent for a moment before following. She couldn't understand Yi Xian's intentions. In fact, Dao Yi couldn't understand Yi Xian's intentions. What was this guy trying to do? Soon, everyone arrived at the Shao world. As soon as they arrived at the Shao world, an old man appeared in front of Yi Xian. The old man was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said, "Senior, please inform your clan leader that Yi Xian of the Yi clan pays his respects." The old man glanced at Yi Xian. "Wait a moment." With that, he turned and left. A moment later, the old man appeared in front of Yi Xian again. "Young Master Yi, please." Under the old man's lead, everyone came to a straw hut in the mountains. There was a vegetable garden in front of the hut, and an old man was hoeing in the garden. Seeing Yi Xian and the others arrive, the old man put down the hoe in his hand and smiled. "Should I call you God Yi or Young Master Yi?" Yi Xian smiled. "Yi Xian." The old man smiled. "Young Master Yi then." With that, he walked to a wooden table and sat down. "Young Master Yi, sit." Yi Xian sat in front of the old man and said directly, "Destroy the Yi clan." Hearing that, everyone was speechless. The smile on the old man's face gradually disappeared, but he quickly returned to normal. He looked at Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi is so straightforward. This old man is a little unprepared." Yi Xian said with a smile, "Annihilating the Yi clan is the purpose of my trip." The old man smiled. "As far as I know, Young Master Yi is extremely good at bluffing. Today, I want to hear Young Master Yi bluff. Come on, please start your performance." Yi Xian was speechless. The old man laughed. "Young Master Yi is so straightforward, so this old man will not play those tricks. My words are a little blunt, please forgive me." Yi Xian opened his palm and the sword spirit appeared in his hand. He placed the sword spirit on the table. "Senior, I obtained this sword by chance. I would like to ask Senior to take a look." The old man glanced at the sword spirit. In an instant, his eyes narrowed. Yi Xian said again, "I've long heard that the Shao clan's bloodline is the #1 bloodline in the eternal world. This junior is not talented, but I would like to see it for myself." The old man looked at Yi Xian. "See the bloodline?" Yi Xian smiled. He opened his palm and the bloodline in his body began to boil. Boom! In an instant, a powerful bloodline power appeared around him. Seeing this bloodline, the old man's expression gradually became solemn. A moment later, the old man turned to the side. "Xian, serve Young Master Yi some tea." Soon, a woman walked out. She was very young, about 20 years old, and very beautiful. The woman poured a cup of tea for Yi Xian, then retreated to the old man's side. Yi Xian retracted the bloodline power. He picked up the teacup and took a sip, then smiled. "The Hera clan has expressed their full support for me. They will not rest until the Yi clan is destroyed." Hearing that, Haraya turned to look at Yi Xian, his mind still in a daze. The elder glanced at Harayan, then at Yi Xian. "I can see it. However, this old man is a little curious about Young Master Yi's identity in this life. I wonder if Young Master Yi can tell me." Yi Xian put down the teacup and said with a smile, "I wonder if Senior has heard of the protagonist halo?" Inside his body, Xiao Ta, the old man frowned. "Protagonist's halo?" Yi Xian said seriously, "To tell you the truth, I am the main character. He has the protagonist's halo. Since he was going to brag, he had to brag big." Anyway, this old man had definitely never been to the Milky Way realm, so he wouldn't know what a main character was. When Xiao Ta heard what Yi Xian said in the prison pagoda, he was dumbfounded. P.S. I don't dare to speak too much recently. As for the updates, please forgive me. I will do my best to save my draft, and then explode. I don't usually brag. Chapter 1703. Protagonist's Halo. In front of Yi Xian, the old man was still puzzled. What's the meaning of this protagonist's halo? Can you explain? Yi Xian smiled. It's equivalent to a person of destiny. He has great luck. Of course, it's more complicated than that. It's hard to explain in a few words. The old man glanced at Yi Xian and said, "You have some unknown karma on you. It's very complicated and not simple." As for this protagonist's halo, he shook his head. "I don't understand." Yi Xian smiled. "It's okay. I don't really understand it either. Now, I want to know what you think." The old man smiled. "I think the Shao clan can just sit back and watch the tigers fight. What do you think?" Yi Xian suddenly said, "I can understand you, but I have a deal. I don't know if you're interested." The old man looked at Yi Xian. "A deal?" Yi Xian nodded. "I want to do you a favor. I don't know if you're willing to buy it." The old man narrowed his eyes and said nothing. Yi Xian picked up his teacup and took a sip. "Senior, I'm going to awaken." "Awaken?" The old man's eyelids twitched. "Awaken? Was this guy going to become God Yi?" Yi Xian said again, "In my previous life and this life, Senior, this isn't one favor. It's two favors. The Shao clan only needs to help me with a small favor." The old man smiled. "What favor?" Yi Xian looked around. The old man suddenly said, "Don't worry, my friend. No one will know about this conversation except for the people here." Yi Xian nodded. "I need the Shao clan to help me at a critical moment." The old man looked at Yi Xian. "The Shao clan's help is equivalent to declaring war on the Yi clan." Yi Xian blinked. The Shao clan is now the leader and the Yi clan is the second. The old man shook his head and smiled. Amazing. The Shao clan was the leader. The Yi clan was the second. What was the second brother's goal? He definitely wanted to be the boss. And if the boss wanted to keep his position, he had to get rid of the second boss. Although the two families looked calm on the surface, they had been fighting in the dark for a long time. Yi Xian looked at the old man and said, "Senior, my people can only act at the most critical moment. Once they do, they must destroy the Yi clan. Therefore, during this period of time, I need the help of the Shao clan and the Hela clan. Of course, the Yi clan doesn't need to help me in the open. Just help me in the dark." The old man picked up the teacup in front of him and took a sip, deep in thought. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Is Senior worried about my determination to take revenge?" The old man glanced at Yi Xian. "Back then, you didn't resist." Yi Xian nodded. "I thought that if I quit, the Yi clan would let me go, but I was wrong. Even if I leave the eternal world, the Yi clan will not let me go. Since that's the case, do I have any other choice besides revenge?" The old man smiled and said, "The Yi clan's way of doing things is really excessive." Yi Xian suddenly looked at the woman beside the old man. When she saw Yi Xian looking at her, she directly looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's gaze suddenly fell on the woman's abdomen. The woman frowned and a cold light flashed in her eyes. Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, "Miss, don't misunderstand. I, Yi Xian, am not that kind of lecherous person. I want to give you a gift." As he spoke, he opened his palm and a scale appeared in his hand. It was Arya's scale. Yi Xian placed the scale on the table and said, "I obtained this by chance. I will give it to you to make armor." The old man looked at the scale. When he saw it, a trace of surprise flashed in the old man's eyes. He picked up the scale and sized it up for a while, then he looked at Yi Xian. "This old man has never seen such a hard thing. Young friend, what kind of demon beast did this come from?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "A scale from my little sister." The old man took a deep look at Yi Xian, and then he passed the scale to the woman beside him. "Thank you, young Master Yi. Xiao Qian took the scale and looked at Yi Xian. Thank you, young Master Yi. Yi Xian smiled and said, Miss, you're too polite. It's just a small item. As he spoke, he looked at the old man. Senior is a straightforward person, and so am I. Senior can give me a definite answer. The old man smiled and said, My Xiao clan can help you, but we won't help you openly. Do you understand what I mean? Yi Xian nodded, I understand. As he spoke, he stood up and said, Then Senior can make your preparations. The old man's eyes narrowed slightly. You're going to make a move? Yi Xian smiled and said, Soon. As soon as he finished speaking, he cupped his fists and said, Farewell. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Dao Yi and the others hurriedly followed him. The old man looked at Yi Xian who was leaving and fell into deep thought. At this moment, Xiao Qian suddenly said, Grandfather, I think he's bluffing. The old man shook his head. That sword isn't an ordinary object. Its owner is definitely a peerless expert. Besides that, his bloodline. His bloodline power isn't just above my Xiao clan's bloodline, it's even above the Yi clan's bloodline, and it's even above the Moke god's bloodline. As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian's figure and said softly, Although this youth is a bit flashy, he really isn't simple. Moreover, since he dared to come to the eternal world by himself and even dared to return to the Yi clan, it means that he definitely has something to rely on. Xiao Qian poured a cup of tea for the old man, and then he said, Grandfather, do you think he can annihilate the Yi clan? The old man smiled and said, Is it important? It's not important. If he can annihilate the Yi clan, then it's an extremely good thing for our Xiao clan. If he can't annihilate it, then what does it matter? In any case, they're just exhausting each other within the clan. Regardless of whether he can annihilate it or not, it's only good for our Xiao clan and not bad. Xiao Qian said in a low voice, Even if we don't make a move, we can still watch from the sidelines. The old man shook his head. It's different. If the power behind this person is really powerful, then once he annihilates the Yi clan, then Yi Xian will owe our Xiao clan a favor. This favor is worth it. Xiao Qian shook his head slightly. Grandfather, if the power behind him is very powerful, then once he annihilates the Xiao clan, then he might become our new enemy. The old man shook his head once more. It's wrong to think like that. Firstly, if the power behind him is really strong, why would he come looking for us? Taking 10,000 steps back, if the power behind him is really strong enough, then what? As he spoke, he looked at Xiao Qian and laughed, Little girl, remember this, my Xiao clan is not invincible. Not to mention my Xiao clan, even the once invincible Mo Ku God clan has withdrawn from the stage of history. If the power behind him is really strong, then wouldn't it be a good thing for us to befriend him? Xiao Qian did not say anything. The old man continued, The ambitions of the Yi clan are not ordinary. They were the number one clan back then, but now that they have become my Xiao clan, do you think they are willing? Now that someone is looking for trouble with them, why not? Xiao Qian nodded slightly. Understood. The old man laughed, What do you think of Yi Xian? Xiao Qian shook her head slightly, fancy, a little insincere. The old man said, Tell me the good points. Xiao Qian frowned slightly, and after a moment, she shook her head, There doesn't seem to be any good points. The old man shook his head and sighed, You little girl. He even gave you a gift. Xiao Qian looked at the scale in his hand, This item is indeed extremely good, but he only gave it to me for another purpose. The old man laughed, What do you think his goal is? Xiao Qian shook his head, I don't know. The old man smiled slightly, He just wants to show off how extraordinary this item is. From the beginning to the end, he wants to tell us that the power behind him is very strong. Xiao Qian said softly, The more he shows off, the weaker the power behind him. Because if he is strong enough, he doesn't need to show off at all. The old man shook his head, not exactly. What he has displayed, for him to possess such a powerful bloodline, his family must not be simple. Speaking of which, he looked at Xiao Qian. Do you know what's so outstanding about him? Xiao Qian shook his head. The old man laughed. For him to be able to talk to me, Pei, is very outstanding. He is someone from the outside world, and logically speaking, the strongest expert he has ever seen is only at the time realm, and your grandfather far surpassed the time realm. However, when he faced me, he was neither servile nor overbearing, and spoke with admiration. If you were to face that woman from the Yi clan, would you be able to do the same? Xiao Qian hesitated for a moment, then shook her head. Not to mention facing the woman from the Yi clan, even when facing the old man in front of her, she was extremely careful, afraid of saying the wrong thing. The old man said softly, for this child to be able to face me so calmly, there is only one explanation, and that is that he has seen the world, or rather, he has seen people stronger than me. Xiao Qian frowned slightly. How is this possible? The old man sighed softly. Little girl, remember this, don't underestimate anyone, including those outside the eternal life realm. Next, let us see how Yi Xian will fight against that woman. As he said that, he laughed. It will definitely be interesting. After Yi Xian led everyone out of the Xiao clan, Hera glanced at Yi Xian. Are we going to the ancient clan? Yi Xian shook his head. Hera said again, 2 sects. Yi Xian shook his head again. We are returning to the Yi clan. Hera frowned slightly. Returning to the Yi clan? Yi Xian nodded. Miss Yan, let us part here. Hera looked at Yi Xian. You really want to go back? Yi Xian laughed. Of course. As he said that, he cupped his fists. Farewell. As he said that, he turned and left. Hera suddenly said, Do you need my Hera clan's help? Yi Xian stopped and looked at Hera. If I ask the Hera clan to help me now, will they? Hera shook his head. Yi Xian laughed. I want you to do me a favor, can you? Hera looked at Yi Xian. Speak. Yi Xian transmitted his celestial qi directly. No one knew what Yi Xian said, but Hera's pupils suddenly shrank. Yi Xian smiled. From now on, I will be monitored by the powerhouses of the Yi clan, so please. As he said that, he turned and left with everyone. Hera was silent for a long time, then turned and left. After returning to the Yi clan, Yi Xian went directly to the hall where Yi Lingtian handled affairs. After entering the hall, Yi Lingtian was the only one there. Yi Lingtian looked at Yi Xian, smiled. You went to the Hera clan and the Xiao clan? Yi Xian nodded. Yi Lingtian smiled. Can you tell me what you are going to do? Yi Xian said, I am going to find them to deal with you. Yi Lingtian blinked, his smile getting brighter. Did they agree? Yi Xian sighed softly. No. Yi Lingtian walked in front of Yi Xian, smiled. Really? Yi Xian said seriously, I swear that if I lie, my mother in my previous life will die a horrible death. She will die without a complete corpse, not even her bones. Yi Lingtian's smile froze. Chapter 1704. In the hall, mother and son stared at each other. After a while, Yi Lingtian suddenly smiled. You're such a good son. Yi Xian smiled. You're a good mother too. Yi Lingtian smiled. Come, meet your friends. As soon as he finished speaking, several people appeared in the hall. The one in the lead was Ah Ming. Besides her, there was also An Lanxiu and the others. They were all here. Yi Xian's expression was calm, and he did not speak. At that moment, Yi Lingtian suddenly said, There's another surprise. She clapped her hands as she spoke. At that moment, a woman suddenly appeared in the hall. When he saw the woman, Yi Xian's expression immediately sank. It was Tuoba Yen. Yi Lingtian smiled. You're really something. You actually left your wife in such a small place. How can you do that? As she spoke, she walked to Tuoba Yan's side, grabbed his hand, and said with a smile, "How can my daughter-in-law be left in such a small place? From today onward, she'll be staying in our Yi clan. Don't worry. When you risk your life for our Yi clan, I'll take good care of her. Of course, your friends too." Yi Xian smiled. To be able to make threats sound so fresh and refined, you're really something. Yi Lingtian rolled his eyes at Yi Xian. How can you say it's a threat? Mother is doing this for your own good. Yi Xian smiled. All right. You're strong, so whatever you say is right. Yi Lingtian looked at Yi Xian and smiled. I suddenly like you a little. You're not just ordinarily tactful. Yi Xian smiled and said, let's get back to business. I've already seized the Hera clan's mineral vein in the everlasting mountain range. Now, you can let her go. Yi Lingtian stared at Yi Xian. Can you tell me why the Hera clan was willing to give that mineral vein to you? I really want to know. Yi Xian blinked. Do you know about Hera? Yi Lingtian smiled. Of course. She's your fiancée and my former daughter-in-law. Yi Xian sternly said, there's no woman I can't handle. Yi Lingtian was stunned. A moment later, she smiled and said, amazing. Amazing. Yi Xian smiled and said, put it in. Yi Lingtian clapped his hands, and a man appeared in the hall. It was Zhu Yan. Yi Xian looked at Yi Lingtian. 19. Yi Lingtian blinked. What 19 people? Yi Xian smiled and said, you're not going to go back on your word, are you? Yi Lingtian quickly shook his head. I promised you that I would release them, but I didn't say when. I will release the rest, but not now. Yi Xian gave him a thumbs up. Awesome. Yi Lingtian smiled and said, same to you. Yi Xian sighed softly. Yi Lingtian was a little curious. Why are you sighing? Yi Xian looked at Yi Lingtian. Before I came, I understood you. Although you did that thing back then, I felt that you were a strong person, an ambitious person, a woman that people couldn't help but admire. But now. As she said that, she shook her head and sighed. Yi Lingtian smiled and said, now what? Yi Xian looked at Yi Lingtian. I feel that it's not shameful to play tricks. However, I feel that a strong person should keep his word. If he doesn't, it's a sign that he can't afford to lose. When I lost to you back then, I admitted defeat. But now, I've obtained the Hera clan's mineral vein, but you're playing word games with me. Are you a sore loser? Yi Lingtian smiled and said, are you trying to provoke me? Yi Xian shook his head. I simply feel that an opponent who doesn't keep his word is not worthy of respect. Your position in my heart is gone all of a sudden. As he said that, he glanced at Tuoba Yen and the others. I'm not angry that you used them to control me. However, the fact that you didn't keep your word makes me feel that it's meaningless to play with you. After saying that, he spread his hands. Kill me. Let's end this farce. Yi Lingtian looked at Yi Xian, still smiling. I suddenly feel that you're very interesting because you're someone who doesn't play by the rules. I'm looking forward to your next move. As she said that, she turned to look at Ugly Slave next to her. Release him. Ugly Slave glanced at Yi Xian, then turned and left. After a while, the other 18 divine generals also appeared in the hall. The 19 people led by Zhu Yan knelt on one knee in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian nodded. Get up. The 19 people stood up and retreated behind Yi Xian. Yi Lingtian smiled. There's something I think is a little tricky and I want you to do it. Can you do it now? Yi Xian smiled. We're mother and son, why are you so polite? Speak. Yi Lingtian laughed and said, the most important thing in the eternal world is the qi of eternal life. However, this qi of eternal life is not endless. After the Mok divine clan was destroyed, the 4 major clans and the 2 major sects controlled the spring of eternal life, which is the core of the eternal world. Yi Xian said solemnly, the qi of eternal life comes from the spring of eternal life? Yi Lingtian nodded. Yes. In order to prevent everyone from fighting for the spring of eternal life, the patriarchs of the major clans discussed a method. That is, every 10 years, the younger generation of the major clans would compete and then divide the qi of eternal life that flows from it. In this way, everyone doesn't need to fight. This method has continued to this day. In recent years, the younger generation of the Yi clan has been a little disappointing, so we can only take a little as a guarantee. Yi Xian smiled. Don't be angry if I say something. You've killed all the decent ones. Who else dares to do so? Yi Lingtian looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. Yi Xian smiled. Don't be angry. If you don't like it, I won't say it next time. Yi Lingtian smiled. Don't be angry. Because what you said is the truth. Getting rid of you has indeed caused the younger generation of the Yi clan to wither. I didn't expect that until now, the Yi clan hasn't even produced a decent genius. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. You should have thought of this back then. Why did you still want to get rid of me? Yi Lingtian smiled. If I wasn't the patriarch, even if the Yi clan was invincible in the universe, what does it have to do with me? Yi Xian immediately gave a thumbs up. Awesome. He finally understood. This woman didn't care about the Yi clan at all. She was really a ruthless person. Yi Lingtian smiled. The competition is about to begin. I want you to win first place and help me get the biggest share of the eternal qi. Is there a problem? Yi Xian thought about it and said, can I state my conditions? Yi Lingtian's Tendo said, you can state your conditions, but I can't guarantee that I'll agree. Yi Xian said in a low voice, I'm not sure I can win first place. You know that I've only just entered the divine state. That's why I want to use some of the Yi clan's resources to reach the realm. This should be a very simple matter for the Yi clan. What do you think? Yi Lingtian did not speak. Yi Xian smiled. I wanted to reach the Ian state, but I think you might be afraid of me. So, let's go with the Ian state. Yi Lingtian smiled. Afraid of you? That's not necessary. Helping you reach the realm is naturally a very simple matter. However, I'm a little afraid that you'll play some other tricks. To be honest, you're a very dishonest person. I'm very worried. Yi Xian looked at Yi Lingtian. In the face of absolute power, everything else is just fleeting clouds, isn't it? Yi Lingtian shook his head. When you say that, I'm even more worried. You know everything, but you still dare to play tricks like this. I'm very worried. Yi Xian spread his hands. Then kill me. That will prevent future trouble. Yi Lingtian rolled his eyes at Yi Xian. I can't bear to. I've already killed you once. If I kill you again, my heart will ache. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. *CK, I don't believe you. If I get in your way, you might even kill your own father, let alone your own son. Thinking of this, Yi Xian's heart suddenly skipped a beat. *CK. He had to ask the previous Yi clan leader how he died. Maybe it was this woman who did it. If it was really this woman who did it, Yi Xian didn't dare to think about it. At this moment, Yi Lingtian suddenly said, make arrangements for the crown prince to advance. As soon as his voice fell, an old man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The old man glanced at Yi Xian. Crown Prince, follow me. Yi Xian suddenly said, I have another request. Yi Lingtian looked at Yi Xian and smiled without saying a word. Yi Xian glanced at Anlanxiu and the others. I need them to advance with me. That's not a problem, right? Yi Lingtian glanced at Anlanxiu and the others. Give me a reason. Yi Xian said, they are all your daughters-in-law. Anlanxiu and the other women, Yi Lingtian looked at Yi Xian. After a long time, she gave him a thumbs up. Awesome. Yi Xian smiled. It doesn't require a lot of resources. Moreover, I'm going there with my life on the line this time. Just agree. Yi Lingtian smiled. You really know how to talk. That mouth of yours is the most formidable one I've ever seen. If you were this good at talking in the past, then I might not have killed you. What a pity. What a pity. As she spoke, she turned to look at the old man. Make arrangements for them to advance. The old man nodded slightly. Meanwhile, Yi Xian said, I have another small request. It's the last one. I want your subordinates to give me sufficient respect. After all, I'm your son. Moreover, I'm about to represent the Yi clan to fight for eternal life. All of them look at me as if I'm their enemy, and it makes me very uncomfortable. Yi Lingtian thought for a moment and said, all right. Yi Xian nodded. Then I'm going to cultivate. As soon as he finished speaking, he led Anlanxiu and the others away. Yi Lingtian watched as Yi Xian left, and the smile on his face gradually vanished. Meanwhile, a voice suddenly resounded from the shadows. I can't see through this kid. Be careful. Yi Lingtian smiled. Very interesting. As she spoke, she looked into the distance. It's not him who decides his life and death, but the people behind him. Ugly Slave should be able to catch up to that woman soon. In the ruins of God. After Ugly Slave arrived at the ruins of God, he glanced around and didn't find anyone. Ugly Slave looked into the distance, and in the next moment, he disappeared into the distant starry sky. He raised his speed to the extreme. Everywhere he passed, the starry sky couldn't withstand his powerful strength and collapsed inch by inch. About 2 hours later, Ugly Slave suddenly turned his head. As he spoke, he stopped. In an unknown starry sky on his right, he saw a woman. A woman in a plain dress. Ugly Slave's figure trembled. In the next moment, he appeared in front of the woman in a plain dress. When he appeared in front of the woman in a plain dress, he noticed that there was a man in a green shirt beside her. A white little fellow sat on the shoulder of the man in a green shirt, and a woman and a little girl stood beside him. The man in a green shirt looked at the woman in a plain dress and chuckled. We'll talk about joining the Sword Alliance later. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned to look at Ugly Slave. Did my son get into trouble again? Did you follow the clues and come to me, his father? Let me make it clear first. What he did has nothing to do with me. If you want to hit him, please use all your strength. Don't show any mercy. Yi Xian was speechless. Ugly Slave glanced at the man in a green shirt and then smiled. So you, the father, are here too. That's great. As he spoke, he sized up the man in a green shirt and the woman in a plain dress. I'll take care of both of you. Beautiful. P.S. When I save 100 chapters, I'll give him 10 chapters a day. Chapter 1705. All at once. The azure-robed man was speechless. The plain-dressed woman glanced at Ugly Slave and didn't speak. Ugly Slave glanced at the green-robed man and the black-robed man. The two of you can come at me together. The azure-robed man smiled. Did my son do something again? Ugly Slave looked at the azure-robed man and smiled. Don't you know? The azure-robed man shook his head. I really don't know. Ugly slave sneered, do you know the Yi clan? Yi clan? The azure-robed man frowned slightly, the Yi clan of Eternal Life World? Ugly slave was stunned, then said, have you heard of it? The azure-robed man smiled, I've heard of it a little. Why? At this point, he seemed to have thought of something and suddenly realized, I understand. It's that god Ye's karma. Why, did he go to Eternal Life World? Ugly slave smiled, he has returned to my Yi clan. Yi clan. Hearing this, the azure-robed man frowned again, what's wrong with this guy? Isn't his opponent the alien race? How did he become Eternal Life World's Yi clan so quickly? Is he crazy? Playing like this. Doesn't he know how to develop first? Arya suddenly said, little Xuanzi should develop wretchedly, don't be reckless. The azure-robed man, ugly slave smiled, he didn't come to find us, we went to find him. The azure-robed man was stunned, then said, you took the initiative to find him? Ugly slave glanced at the azure-robed man and the plain-dressed woman, according to my Yi clan's investigation, you two are their backers? The azure-robed man was about to speak when the plain-dressed woman suddenly said, yes. Ugly slave looked at the plain-dressed woman and smiled, your attitude makes the old man very unhappy. The plain-dressed woman suddenly looked at the azure-robed man, where is Eternal Life World? The azure-robed man's expression froze. He naturally knew what this woman wanted to do. This woman wanted to directly destroy Eternal Life World. Beside the azure-robed man, Arya licked the candied fruit and then retreated behind the azure-robed man. Damn, this woman is going to go crazy again. The plain-dressed woman opened her palm, and a sword appeared in her hand. She looked at the azure-robed man, The azure-robed man smiled awkwardly, he is also in the Eternal World. If you slash down with your sword, I'm afraid he will also be gone. The woman in a plain dress frowned slightly when she heard this, and the walk sword in her hand gradually calmed down. At this time, the ugly slave on the side suddenly laughed, what, are you going to kill your way to Eternal Life Realm? This old man is going to die of laughter. The plain-dressed woman glanced at the ugly slave, it's fine if he's as weak as an ant. Why are they so ugly? The azure-robed man and the others, ugly slave stared at the plain-dressed woman, so what if I'm ugly? The plainly dressed woman raised her hand and slashed with her sword. Chi! A sword pierced through ugly slave's forehead. Blood splattered everywhere. Ugly slave was stunned. The plain-dressed woman glanced at the ugly slave. Ugly deserves to die. Ugly slave stared at the plain-dressed woman, his eyes filled with fear, you. Why can't I take your sword? At that moment, ugly slave's heart was filled with extreme fear. He had just seen the plain-dressed woman draw her sword. However, before he could retaliate, he was stabbed between the eyebrows. He didn't even have the strength to fight back. At that moment, all of ugly slave's previous knowledge was subverted. Even the Yi clan's current #1 expert, Yi Lingtian, couldn't kill him so easily. Could it be that this woman was stronger than the clan leader? The plain-dressed woman ignored ugly slave and turned to look at the azure-robed man, I'm leaving. I'll leave him to you. If he dies, I'll kill all of you. After saying that, she turned and walked into the distance. The azure-robed man quickly said, don't you want to consider joining the Sword Alliance? The plain-dressed woman didn't stop, is he the Sword Alliance's Swordmaster? The azure-robed man smiled, he will be in the future. The plain-dressed woman said, tell me when he is. After saying that, she disappeared at the end of the starry sky. Obviously, she would only join the Sword Alliance when Yi Xian was the Swordmaster. The azure-robed man shook his head and smiled. This woman was still so hard to talk to. No. She was only nice to one person, and that was Yi Xian. All her kindness and gentleness were only for Yi Xian. At this moment, Arya, who was next to the azure-robed man, suddenly said, "Brother Yang, she's still so arrogant." The azure-robed man laughed, "She's very arrogant." As he said that, he looked at Ugly Slave on the side. At this moment, Ugly Slave was still stunned. He really couldn't accept that he was killed in seconds. He was actually killed in seconds. He had lived for hundreds of thousands of years. He never felt that he was invincible, but in his opinion, there would be no more than 10 people in this world who could kill him. And just now, he didn't even have the strength to fight back. His opponent's sword had been so casual, so effortless. What's going on? The azure-robed man suddenly smiled. Is he doing well in the Yi clan? Ugly Slave looked at the azure-robed man, a little confused. Who is she? The azure-robed man smiled. Do you mean that woman just now? Ugly Slave nodded. The azure-robed man smiled. Her name is Tian Ming. Tian Ming. Ugly Slave's eyes flashed a trace of confusion. I've never heard of it. Outside the immortal world, there is such a powerful person. Powerful? The azure-robed man smiled. She is indeed very powerful. In the current universe, her strength is only second to me. Hearing this, Arya and Xiaofan couldn't help but look at the azure-robed man. The two little guys were a little stunned. Ugly Slave's body trembled slightly. He looked at the azure-robed man and said with a trembling voice, "Only second to you?" The azure-robed man said seriously, "Yes." Ugly Slave's throat rolled. "You are stronger than her?" The azure-robed man smiled, "Of course." Arya and Xiaofan shook their heads. This father and son pair were both shameless people. One was more shameless than the other. In front of the azure-robed man, Ugly Slave was a little suspicious. "Are you really stronger than her?" The azure-robed man smiled. "Come, I'll prove it to you." As he said that, he patted Ugly Slave's shoulder. Boom! In an instant, a wisp of sword energy directly protected Ugly Slave's heart meridian, and his dissipating soul immediately returned to normal. The azure-robed man blinked. "I'm going to attack now." Ugly Slave turned around and ran. His speed was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, he disappeared at the end of the starry sky. This place was too far from the immortal world, and he couldn't contact Yiling Tian at all. Therefore, he had to rush back and inform Yiling Tian so that Yiling Tian could be mentally prepared. That woman in the plain dress was too terrifying. At this moment, Ugly Slave suddenly stopped. A sword had pierced between his eyebrows at some point. At this moment, the azure-robed man and the others had already appeared in front of him. The azure-robed man looked at Ugly Slave and smiled. "What do you think of my sword?" Ugly Slave, the azure-robed man smiled, and then said, "Let's go. Go find Brother Xiao. How can this sword alliance not have him?" Huh. After saying that, the group walked towards the depths of the distant starry sky. At this moment, Arya, who was beside the azure-robed man, suddenly asked, "Brother Yang, why don't we destroy the Yi clan?" Ugly Slave asked, and his expression froze. The azure-robed man shook his head and smiled. "Forget it. Since he didn't use the Swordmaster token, it proves that he wants to rely on himself to fight against the Yi clan. Let him play." Arya hesitated, and then said, "Didn't they say that the Yi clan is much more powerful than Little Xuanzi?" The azure-robed man thought for a moment, and then he turned his head to look, and a trace of worry flashed in the depths of his eyes. After a moment, he pointed to the right, and a ray of sword light directly entered the depths of the starry sky. The azure-robed man rubbed Arya's little head, and said with a smile, "It's arranged. Let's go." Arya nodded slightly. After a while, the group disappeared into the distance. Behind them, Ugly Slave's body became more and more illusory. The Yi clan is finished. When he completely disappeared, the last thought flashed in his mind. That woman in the plain dress was already so terrifying, and there was still the azure-robed man. how could the Yi clan play? There was no way to play. Most importantly, the Yi clan still did not know the true strength of these two people. Yi clan. Yi Xian sat cross-legged in a small hall, his eyes slightly closed, and his hands on his knees. Breakthrough to the Supreme God Realm. With the guidance of the top experts of the Yi clan, breaking through to the godly state was really too easy for him. At this moment, the beast deity's voice suddenly sounded, "Little guy, I don't understand your tricks. What are you trying to do?" Yi Xian opened his eyes and said with a smile, "Play." The beast deity said solemnly, "Little guy, let me tell you, this woman is not simple. You might not be able to defeat her. Moreover, the experts of the Yi clan are as numerous as trees in a forest. Not to mention the current you, even if you reach the intent realm, you will not be able to overthrow the Yi clan." Yi Xian nodded, "I know." The beast deity said again, "Are you really not going to use the Swordmaster's token?" Yi Xian took out the Swordmaster's token and said with a smile, "Senior, do you know why I have not used this token?" The beast deity asked, "Why?" Yi Xian smiled, "I am not pedantic, I just want to try my best. I don't want to use my father's power without giving it my all. Moreover, I don't want to put all my hopes on my father. What if he becomes unreliable one day? What will I do then?" The beast deity did not speak. Yi Xian said again, "The enemy is much stronger than me, but I still want to give it my all." With that, he slowly closed his eyes. Rely on yourself. That was what he was thinking now. The beast deity suddenly said, "Your thinking is not wrong. In this world, relying on yourself is the way to go. But little guy, you really have no chance of winning." Yi Xian smiled, "It's not that there isn't. At least now, I have discovered an important piece of information." The beast deity was a little curious, "What is it?" Yi Xian said softly, "In this archaic realm, the Hela clan and the Shao clan are not happy with the Yi clan." The beast deity said, "They are not happy with the Yi clan, but they will not risk their lives to help you against the Yi clan unless you show them your strength." The corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up, "They will. Because as long as there are enough benefits, they will definitely help." The beast deity was a little curious, "What are you going to do?" Yi Xian's smile became even more strange, "It's a secret for now." Chapter 1706. Half a month later, Yi Xian reached the transcendent state. Meanwhile, Anlanxiu, Ming, and the rest were still cultivating. Yi Xian got up and left the hall. He looked around and walked into the distance. Soon, he arrived at a courtyard. Zhu Yan, Mu Sheng, and the rest were here. Seeing Yi Xian walk over, everyone bowed in unison. Yi Xian looked at Zhu Yan. "How do you feel now?" Zhu Yan said solemnly, "My injuries are fine. However, my cultivation level is too far behind. Right now, we've fallen too far behind in the Yi clan." As he spoke, his expression darkened. Now, he finally understood why that woman would let them go. Because they were no threat to the Yi clan at all. Not only was their strength lagging behind, but they also had no trusted aides or military power. Rebellion? There was no way to rebel. Yi Xian smiled. "It's fine. You don't have to risk your lives anymore." Zhu Yan said solemnly, "Young Master Yi, what plan do you have?" Yi Xian shook his head. "What plan can I have? I can't beat that woman and I don't have as many people as she does. What can I do?" Zhu Yan was a little unwilling. Could it be that Prince is willing to serve her like this? Yi Xian smiled. "Zhu Yan, don't ask about other things. What you need to do now is to cultivate." With that, he looked at Bai and Mu Sheng. "You too as well." With that, he turned and left. Zhu Yan looked at the departing Yi Xian and fell into deep thought. Outside, the beast god's voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind. Kid, you don't trust them? Yi Xian smiled. Why do you say that? The beast god smiled. From the beginning until now, I feel that you don't trust these 19 people. Yi Xian shook his head. Senior, you think too much. It's not that I don't trust them, I'm just wary. Because so many years have passed, anything can change. If they are the same as before, then they should have a good ending. If they... As he spoke, he shook his head and smiled. In short, I hope they can have a good ending. The beast god smiled and said, Kid, I'll say it again. Based on the current situation, I don't think you have any chance of winning. However, I also know that you are not simple. You are very sinister. I can only say that I look forward to your next performance. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. I can only say that it's a gamble with my life. The beast god laughed. Young people should play with their lives. Yi Xian took a deep breath and looked at the distant horizon. Then let's begin. With that, he turned around and left. In a certain hall, Yi Lingtian sat quietly. In front of her was an old man in black. The old man in black had a long saber at his waist. The two of them were playing chess. Yi Lingtian suddenly smiled and said, What has he been doing recently? The old man in black said, He did nothing but cultivate. Yi Lingtian glanced at the old man in black and said with a smile, So obedient? The black-robed old man nodded, It's abnormal to know one's place. Yi Lingtian smiled faintly. I don't know what this little guy is thinking. The black-robed old man picked up a chess piece and placed it down, then said, Kill him. Yi Lingtian was silent, seemingly thinking. The black-robed old man said softly, This kid is not the god Yi from back then. Yi Lingtian narrowed his eyes when he heard that. Not the god Yi from back then. If Yi Xian was given a chance, Yi Xian would not hesitate to overthrow the Yi clan. Right then, the black-robed old man said again, The strength of the person behind him is unknown, and the unknown means that anything is possible. Therefore, this kid must be killed. Lest we raise a tiger in our bosom. Yi Lingtian smiled and said, Kill him after the competition. The black-robed old man wanted to say something but hesitated. Yi Lingtian smiled and said, We need a victory so that we can regain the right to speak. Otherwise, if we make the first move, the Shao clan and the Hela clan will definitely join forces. The old rules can't be broken for now, so we'll follow the rules. Once the competition is over, he can die. The black-robed old man nodded slightly. Yi Lingtian turned his head and looked outside the hall. I wonder if ugly slave found that woman. A month later, with the help of the Yi clan, Yi Xian had reached the god-destroying realm. Yi Xian was a little emotional. Cultivating in such a place was really too fast. A person's birth was simply too important. Being born outside and being born in the Yi clan were worlds apart. Of course, if one was not born well, they needed to work even harder. Yi Xian retracted his thoughts and walked out of the hall. At that moment, a shadow suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The clan leader invites you in. Yi Xian smiled and said, Let's go. Under the shadow's lead, Yi Xian arrived at Yi Lingtian's hall. Inside the hall, Yi Lingtian glanced at Yi Xian and smiled. Your cultivation speed is very fast, very good. Yi Xian sat in front of Yi Lingtian. Who is the most monstrous person in the Shao clan? Yi Lingtian poured himself a cup of tea and said, Shao Qian, Shao Qian, The woman he saw that day suddenly appeared in Yi Xian's mind. At that time, he did not feel anything, but now that he thought about it carefully, that woman's aura was completely unfathomable. Yi Xian asked again, is she at the intent realm? Yi Lingtian glanced at Yi Xian. The peak of the eternity realm. No, she should be half a step into the critical realm now. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Critical realm? Yi Lingtian smiled. The eternity realm can materialize time and form a river of time. The critical realm is to reach the limit of the time dimension, which is the critical point of time. Yi Xian was a little curious. What is the critical point of time? Yi Lingtian opened her palm and gently waved it. A river of time appeared beside her. Yi Lingtian's Tendo said, "This is the river of time." As she spoke, she gently clenched her lily-white hand. Boom! The river of time directly condensed into a point, as fine as sand. Yi Xian was stunned. Yi Lingtian put her fingers together, and that point immediately attached to her fingertip. She looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "This finger of mine is enough to easily destroy a world." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Is it that terrifying?" Yi Lingtian waved her lily-white hand, and the point on her fingertip disappeared. She looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "There's something even more terrifying. Do you want to experience it?" A show of force. Yi Xian laughed. "There's no need to experience it. I know you're very strong. At least, I definitely can't beat you." Yi Lingtian looked at Yi Xian. "Besides Xiao Qian, there's another person you need to be careful of. That is Gu Shi of the ancient clan. According to the information we received, this person is very extraordinary. However, he has always kept a low profile. This time, however, he probably won't keep a low profile. This concerns the interests of the ancient clan. Besides him, you also need to be careful of the Hera clan and the other two sects, because a dark horse will appear every time. Of course, other than when you were around, that era was your era. No young person is a match for you." Yi Xian said with a smile, "If I get first place, will there be a reward?" Yi Lingtian said with a smile, "I'll reward you with eternal life." Yi Xian asked with a smile, "The chi of eternal life?" Yi Lingtian's smile became brighter. "Yes." Yi Xian nodded. "I'll do it." Yi Lingtian said with a smile, "Get ready. It will begin in half a month." Yi Xian nodded. "All right." With that, he turned and left. Yi Lingtian looked at Yi Xian leaving in the distance. A moment later, she slowly closed her eyes. A moment later, Yi Lingtian said softly, "There's still no news of ugly slave?" Beside her, an old man in black suddenly appeared. The old man in black shook his head. "No." Yi Lingtian opened her eyes and looked outside the hall. "In that case, he should be dead." The old man in black nodded. "Dead?" Yi Lingtian said with a smile, "It seems that we underestimated this woman." The old man in black asked, "Should I go?" Yi Lingtian shook her head. "There's no need for that." As she said that, she chuckled. "I believe that when that little guy is about to die, she will appear on her own." The old man in black nodded slightly and quietly disappeared. Yi Xian returned to his house. Inside the house, he sat cross-legged on the ground. Just like that, Yi Xian was silent for a full hour. 2 hours later, Yi Xian suddenly got up and left. During this time, Yi Xian wandered around the clan. Every day, he would wander around here and there, and from time to time, he would deliberately cause trouble. In the Yi clan, no one cared about him. That was because everyone in the Yi clan knew that Yi Xian was going to represent the Yi clan in the competition. The most important thing was Yi Lingtian's attitude towards Yi Xian. Many people in the Yi clan were a little confused about Yi Lingtian's attitude. The mother and son would sometimes talk and laugh. They did not seem like enemies at all. As for Yi Xian, he completely regarded himself as the young prince of the Yi clan. He called himself the young prince wherever he went. Just like that, Yi Xian wandered around for half a month. During this time, basically everyone in the Yi clan knew about him. On this day, the day of the competition arrived. The 4 major clans and the 2 major sects of the Everlasting World gathered in the Everlasting Valley. The Everlasting Valley contained the legendary Spring of Eternal Life. Here, the 4 major clans and the 2 major sects guarded the place. Somewhere above the clouds, Yi Lingtian looked down at the Everlasting Valley. No one knew what she was thinking. Beside her were Yi Xian and the old man in black with the saber. In addition, there were also a group of Yi clan experts behind them. Yi Tian and Yi Qian were there too. Yi Lingtian looked down at the Everlasting Valley and smiled. The Spring of Eternal Life is really tempting. Yi Xian looked at Yi Lingtian and laughed. Don't worry, mother. Today, I will defeat all the clans and win first place for you. Mother was so loud that all the experts of the Yi clan heard it clearly. Yi Lingtian looked at Yi Xian, and the smile on her face had vanished. Because it was the first time Yi Xian had called her mother. Suddenly, an unexpected event occurred. An old man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Lingtian. It was the patriarch of the Xiao clan, Xiao Tian. Xiao Tian looked at Yi Lingtian and smiled. Patriarch Yi, this old man is itching to spar with you. You don't mind, right? As he spoke, he suddenly waved his right hand. In an instant, the place where he and Yi Lingtian stood became illusory. Spacetime teleportation. Yi Lingtian's eyes narrowed slightly. She was about to attack when another figure flashed before her. It was the patriarch of the Hera clan, Heralian. Heralian pressed his right hand down lightly, and the 3 of them instantly vanished. The sudden turn of events left all the Yi clan experts dumbfounded. Meanwhile, the old man in black with the saber suddenly turned around and glared at Yi Xian. It's you. You colluded with outsiders to harm the family. All the experts of the Yi clan looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at the old man in black and said angrily, she is my mother. You actually said that I harmed my mother? What are your intentions? As he spoke, he turned to look at the cultivators of the Yi clan. I, God Yi, would rather die than betray my mother. How could I join forces with outsiders to harm her? Who doesn't know that I, God Yi, am the most filial son in the immortal world? Everyone. P.S. I've given up on those fancy swords. Chapter 1707. The most filial son. It had to be said that God Yi was indeed a filial son in the immortal realm. Back then, he had the chance to resist. After all, there were quite a few people on his side and they all had real power. Coupled with the Hera clan, he had a chance to fight against Yi Lingtian. However, he did not choose to do so. If Hera had not forced him to leave, he would have been willing to die. It was precisely because of this that the Hera clan had always been unhappy. Opposite Yi Xian, the old man in black stared at him. You still want to quibble? As he spoke, his left hand was already on the hilt of his sword. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. Yi Xian suddenly sneered. Why, do you want to kill the Yi clan's young master? The old man in black sneered. What kind of young master are you? Yi Xian suddenly shouted angrily, how dare you? My mother personally conferred me the title of Yi clan's young master. Are you blind? The old man in black stared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, is there any point in playing these cheap tricks? Is there? Yi Xian smiled. You just said that I colluded with the Xiao clan. Do you have any evidence? The old man in black sneered. Old man doesn't need evidence. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged directly at Yi Xian. Obviously, he wanted to kill Yi Xian directly. At that moment, a shadow suddenly rushed out of Yi Xian's body. It was Beast God. Boom! An explosion suddenly sounded in front of Yi Xian. The next moment, Beast God and the old man in black retreated rapidly. After Beast God stopped, he looked at the old man in black with a hint of seriousness in his eyes. The old man in black glanced at Beast God and was about to attack again. At that moment, Yi Xian suddenly pointed angrily at the old man in black. You must have colluded with the Shao clan to divide the Yi clan. Divide the Yi clan. Hearing that, all the Yi clan powerhouses looked at the old man in black. In fact, they were a little confused at that moment. They naturally respected Yi Lingtian, but now that Yi Lingtian was not there, there was a problem. Who should they listen to? Yi Xian? Under normal circumstances, there was nothing wrong with listening to Yi Xian. After all, Yi Xian was now the Yi clan's young prince. However, who did not know the relationship between Yi Lingtian and Yi Xian? Yi Lingtian almost killed God Yi back then. But now, Yi Lingtian had accepted Yi Xian into the Yi clan and made him the crown prince. He had even asked him to represent the Yi clan in the competition. Many of the Yi clan's experts could no longer understand Yi Lingtian's intentions. Had the mother and son reconciled? Seeing the expressions on the faces of the Yi clan experts, the black-robed old man's face fell. How could he not know what they were thinking? The matter of using Yi Xian was only known to him and a few others. Naturally, Yi Lingtian would not tell his subordinates about this. This is great. He had been used by Yi Xian. No wonder this guy has been wandering around the Yi clan recently and often calls himself this prince. This fellow did it on purpose. It was premeditated. Thinking of this, the black-robed old man calmed down. Yi Xian must have something up his sleeves. He looked up at the sky. At that moment, he could no longer sense the existence of Yi Lingtian and the others. Two super experts had joined forces. At that moment, Yi Xian suddenly looked at Guardian Yi Tian. Seeing Yi Xian looking at him, Yi Tian lowered his head slightly and did not speak. Obviously, he knew what Yi Xian wanted to do. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Guardian Yi Tian, do you still recognize me as the crown prince?" Yi Tian looked at Yi Xian and still did not speak. Everyone in the field was looking at Yi Xian. They were not fools. They clearly knew Yi Xian's intentions. Yi Xian wanted to seize power. But, what right did he have? Strength. Strength was everything. The Yi clan respected Yi Lingtian because of his strength. Did Yi Xian have that strength? Obviously not. Yi Tian looked at Yi Xian and still did not say a word. Not saying a word was a refusal. Right now, the Yi clan needed Yi Lingtian, not Yi Xian. Only Yi Lingtian was there. Yi Clan Green City, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian is removed from the position of crown prince and will be succeeded by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a young man with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At that moment, a timid voice suddenly rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling. She was Yi Xian's sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, "Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a crown prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The Great Elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. "This is a matter of the clan. Why are you interrupting? Leave." Yi Ling was obviously afraid and did not dare to look at the Great Elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. "Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan for the rights to the mine. He is fighting for the clan, and his life is uncertain. Yet, the clan is using groundless excuses to strip him of his crown prince position. This is really unfair. Impudent." The Great Elder suddenly raged. "Whether or not he is crippled is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new crown prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The Great Elder replied coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 Yi clan's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now, he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the crown prince position. What are you shouting about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap was heard. Yi Ling's right cheek instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry. She only covered her cheek tightly. Yi Long sized up the guard and asked with a smile, "What's your name?" The guard quickly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded, "You are very good. After I become the crown prince, I will need 10 guards. From now on, you will be my guard." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He quickly bowed deeply. "I will go through fire and water for the crown prince. I will do anything for you." Yi Lang nodded slightly. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Do not show mercy. Understood?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The Great Elder narrowed his eyes. His face was dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this moment, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pang! Zhang Mu felt dizzy, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there. He charged at Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu. As he walked up to Yi Ling, seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and stomped on Zhang Mu's head. Pang! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the Yi clan elders. Why? Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the hall, as she asked timidly, "Great Elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a family matter, what are you butting in for? Leave." Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince." Impudent! The Great Elder suddenly raged. "Whether or not he is crippled, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The Great Elder replied coldly, "Then do it 30 times. Very quickly, 2 Yi clan guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap! A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Long sized up the guard and asked with a smile, "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You are very good. After I become the prince, I will need 10 guards. From now on, you will be my guard." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed, and hurriedly bowed deeply. "Subordinate will go through fire and water for the prince, even if I have to die 10,000 times." Yi Lang nodded slightly. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Do not show mercy, understood?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu did not know what he saw, but he suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his expression was frighteningly gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face instantly turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak, when Yi Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pang! Zhang Mu felt his head spin, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there, and he rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's entire face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, who was crying for help, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed, brother, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pang! You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.